to the Making Up the Numbers podcast. The Making Up the Numbers podcast is sponsored by Hope Technology, J-Tech Suspension, Revolution Bike Park, Ride Southern Spain, Schwal, and the world's finest independent mountain bike magazine, Singletrack.
Hello and welcome to our final episode of 2022. And in this episode, we're going to be returning to the Enduro arena for the first time this year as we chat with two-time EWS champion Richie Rude. Then we'll be catching up with Mr. Performex, Todd Schumlick, about training Richie and Aaron and lots of others, and his side hustle, which is, of course, running the Intense Factory Racing team. But first, in case you've been sleeping under a bush for the last few days, there was a big announcement by the UCI and DSO last week. The lead stories from it are that the EWS and the EWSE are being incorporated into the UCI family and will now become UCI Mountain Bike World Cups. And downhill, well, there's some new rule changes that I don't know about everyone else, but they made my head spin a bit when I was reading them. But thankfully, alongside me are a couple of people who have a better grasp of it than I am sure. Jack and Emilie, where to start?
Well, I think we got to be careful, haven't we? Because we've got half an hour to do this intro, and we could talk about this for about 24 hours. So
let's start with how you doing. Merry Xmas to you both. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And I think firstly, I'd like to take the opportunity. I haven't prepared anything,
yeah.
But I think as the last podcast of 2022, I think myself and everybody listening, thanks to you, George, the podcast is absolutely killing it. And all the work you do behind the scenes, like me and Emilie just turn up and chat.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, you do all the prep, and I think I'd just like to say on behalf of me and everyone listening, thank you, and keep at it because it's sick.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice.
Very well.
Lovely way to wrap up the year. So let's get into the interesting stuff. First thing I noticed was that this race number allocation. So there'll be season-long race numbers for the top 10 men and top 5 women. And those numbers will be based on the final standings of the previous season. So to rock the number 1 plate from now on, you need to have won the series. Thoughts on that? Good thing, bad thing?
Yeah, I don't know. There's you could have mixed emotions about that, but one side is, and I think it's also what Cam said, like as the overall winner. If you don't have that, you actually have nothing. Like you turn up to the first race, you lose the number 1 maybe, and then like it's gone forever. And it's a big achievement. So I think it's like it's pretty cool. Like in Formula 1, when you win the championships, you can choose to run the number 1 or not. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. And other sports did it before. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. But you could also say, for example, that they can run it maybe to a larger number of people. Not only top 10 and top 5, you know.
Yeah.
But also, you could also say, like, it doesn't represent the current overall, so it would be maybe harder for people to follow who is actually doing well that season. But my personal opinion, I think it's pretty cool to make a change, and maybe if they could add, like, a color to the current overall, like a red plate for, like, someone that's leading the overall, that could be better for, like, the overall understanding, but I like it.
Yeah, that's a nice idea. I like that one too. Yeah, I like it as well. I think it's good. Jack?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said about it would be easy to have mixed feelings about it. I do. I gave it a little bit of thought earlier today, and I don't like it more than I like it. A couple of reasons for that. I think it's that first race when everyone turns up with their numbers reflecting their performance on the previous season. It's like, yeah, cool. But especially next year, are we going to wait 9 months between the last round of 2022 and the first round of 2023? And then we're going to move on the following weekend to Leogang after Lenzide. And that top 10, there's going to be no reflection in the numbers on what's happening in the here and now. And I think Alex Foyol is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
He won in Lords in the weather in 2017, I think it was. And then he was one of those riders permanently protected. And I know for a fact, I've heard he's said it to people I know, that the pressure of running that 10 board all season, it ruined his season. because he didn't perform to that level in the following year. So, yeah, it's hard to pick away, but I don't like it really. I don't think.
Fair enough. Next thing, the introduction, and this is where it's going to get controversial, I think, the introduction of a semi-final. So qualifying as normal, but then the top 60 elite men and top 15 elite women move on to a semi-final, and the top 30 elite men and the top 10 elite women from the semis move on to finals. Points, well, winning quali gets you 50 points, winning semis gets you 200 for the men, 150 for the women, and winning the final gets you 250 for men and 200 for women. So semis are nearly as valuable as the final. As a fan, in principle, I kind of like it. I think, more racing, which is great for the fans. What are your thoughts on it?
So yeah, that I like it because I like this podcast because then I can, when you're rider's rep, you're not supposed to give your opinion. Like, it's the rider's opinion, not mine. And here I can just give my opinion. So well, I think the first thing that's crossed my mind is just like people are trying to reduce the number of riders in final.
Yeah, that's
the main thing. They want to get to 30 to 10, but they didn't want to go straight away to there because it is so they try to find a solution to still broadcast a larger number of riders, and the idea was to have a semi-final. The big problem with that is that there's qualifying on Friday, let's say, and then there's semi-final in the morning of Saturday, and then race run on Saturday afternoon. So there's 3 race run in 1.5 day. And as a former racer, like, the level of intensity and focus and commitment you have to deliver performances that we've seen last year, like the amazing run that we've seen, like Finn's run in Mont Saint Anne. You won't ever see that again if you have 3 runs in 1.5 day, because everyone is gonna ride safely and try to have consistent points. And that's also the problem with the points that you said. Maybe we can come to that later because the point system is almost no difference between semis and finals. And that's that's the point distribution is wrong completely. But I think the concept of a semi-final, which I understand the point because they want to broadcast more rider, they want to give more race time. But I think it takes a little bit away the proper nature of downhill. It goes towards more like a tiny enduro race.
Yeah. Do you think it devalues the World Cup win a little bit? Because what do you get?
Oh yeah, completely. Because you can get third at every race and win the overall easy.
Yeah.
You can if you get third at every race, someone that wins every race, let's say, every final, let's say, and messed up the last round. The final of the last round gives 500 points at once. So someone that's been maybe let's say in 5th every year, every race, and then gets just the win on the last one, he could win the overall.
Yeah.
So that's it's not very a smart way to do an overalls point distribution, in my opinion.
Jack?
Yeah, pretty much. I agree with everything you've just said for sure. I mean, I think I'll more just pile on really. And just lay it a little bit thicker. It's, initially, when I read the press release, I was like, "Oh, cool, same as you, George." Obviously, I'm competing next year. I'm going to be in that pack of riders trying to fight for those spots. And my initial thought as a rider was, "Sick, more racing." And then my brain went, shit, you're going to do that semi-final run, and if you have a stormer, because you're going to have a stormer, let me tell you that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've had splits in the top 30 in 2022 was Fort William, and I was on a heater until I punctured. And the stress, like Emmy said, when you're taking those risks is massively intense. And even when you have a storming quali run, sometimes to think, I've got to go and do that again tomorrow. Like whenever I've qualified in the top 20, that's almost such a rush that you don't even want to go up again the following day, even for practice. You're like that adrenaline surge and that feeling of success Now that's going to happen for quali. Then everybody's going to have to go, shit, we're fighting for a top 30 place in finals, which is so difficult now. They're then going to have, 2 hours? I mean, something we haven't even just touched on is bikes. Most riders are now going to probably be having conversations with mechanics and team managers about having 2 bikes. One for the morning and then another one just sat there just in case they're not sure things are going to work for that finals run. So as Emmy says, they've tried to reduce the numbers in a way to make it exciting, in a way to make more racing, but they've not done it in a way where they're considering the riders at all. There is absolutely no consideration there on what the riders want, because I'd be pretty amazed if there's more than 5% of the riders that want this. So that's my feeling.
So am I right in saying, as far as you guys know, none of the riders have been consulted?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, people weren't consulted about this. I knew rumors that a top 30 final was talked about, but when I got the team manager letter about 2 hours before the press release went out, it's the first I'd heard of a semi-final, and certainly the first I'd heard of anything happening twice in one day.
Well, what you said before, Emmy, about riders riding conservatively, do you think that's really going to happen? Like what Jack's just said there about the pressure, the speed that those people that they're riding at now, when they actually get there. I mean, how many riders could actually make it through to a final?
I was just about to
going at absolute full gas.
I was just about to say there'll be 5 to 10 that can maybe play the points game in the semis and go, I'll just get in and I'll be somewhere, because someone like Danny Hart or Marie, they know they can get in that top 30, winding it up back a bit. But then there's a block of like 60 to 70 riders that are all going to just absolutely wind it on to try and get in that semis.
Yeah.
Emmy?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like people that are playing the overall though, like with these overall points, it's not like people are going to have to, if that actually like takes place, that format, people are going to have to like change their racecraft, like change the way they approach a race, like the tactics, everything they've learned over 5 to 10 years now. It's all going to be all different. So this is a bit like, that's I think what the riders have a problem from, because they develop such a way to deal with the format as a whole, and that's going to change the nature of what they worked for so long. So I think that's what the problem is for them.
So let me go on to the bit that I genuinely think is like controversial as a non-rider. So anyone with a season-long race number, so top 10 men, top 5 women from the previous season, is protected for semi-finals. Then come the best ranked riders from the current World Cup standings until a total of 10 women and 20 men are reached. So for the first race, the top 20 from the 2022 final standings. Then for the final, it's back to the number boards, and anyone with a 1 to 3 number board is protected for the women, and anyone with a 1 to 5 for the men. What that means, if I understand it right, is that Emilie Piron, Finn Isles, Loris Vergier, Andy Kolb and Bernard Kerr are racing every semi and every final. Now, to me, that gives them a huge advantage over someone like Loic or Matt Walker, who've both won the overall in the last couple of years, but both battled injury last season. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, so protection has always been a hard topic. It's always been hard to make it fair in any way, because some of the riders, for example, in the past years, some of the riders that were in the standings and were racing took a protection spot away from people that were actually at the race. So it was already like a problem. And now it's even more a problem because the standings are not taking in any consideration for finals protection. So someone that is leading the overall could miss the final potentially, but someone that won the overall the year before, could be in is gonna be in there. So that's a very critical topic, and I think it was just easier the way it was, like without the semifinal then, and it's just no polemic about this, and top 20 protection is pretty fair considering in comparison to now.
If I'd have asked you last month who was more likely to win the 2023 overall out of Loic Bruni and Finn Isles, who would you have picked?
Yeah.
Hard.
I know what you're getting at. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would have probably gone Loic just because of the experience and the history. And like you're about to say, Finn's now in that top 5. So can he afford to play it a bit smarter and get away with it? So
who would you pick now? Would you pick Finn now?
I honestly don't feel like I understand how it's going to affect things enough, if that makes sense. Because, I mean, if it was my decision, I'd get rid of the protectors completely. And the reason for that is the strength and depth in the top of our sport now, that top 15 to 20 riders, is so strong. So one of them messes up and doesn't get in. What, you've lost your show? Was there still a show at Maribor the year Minard didn't qualify? Yeah, of course there was. In fact, it created a huge... It was Maribor, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's the first race. Yeah.
It created a huge talking point. Like, so if I was asked, I'd say just get rid of it. But I'm not. So we are where we are. But to answer your question, honestly, I don't know. These guys at the top of the sport, I think a lot of them, like if you ask Danny, I reckon Danny would probably just say, I'm just going to race my bike.
Yeah.
I'd probably be what he'd say. He's probably not thinking about it. Like, and I mean, at the moment, we've talked about is the men's. How do you think this is going to affect the women's then? Do you think it'll have a big effect, or do you think it'll be less of an effect that it will on the men?
Well, the final is going to be 10, so it's reduced to 50, from 50 to 10. So that's already like, we thought we're going to go back to 20, after last season. So this is going backwards for me. If you ask me as a female rider, I'm not happy with this decision. And to be honest, between like this, I don't know, with the amount of riders, like it doesn't matter if it's, I mean, if it's 60 to 30, it's 30 riders that go away. Like it's a lot of time for the broadcast, but 5 riders, how much time is that? Like, I don't know, like, so, and the fact that there's protection, we've seen in the past, like there was some protection rule that were like very, very controversial, where the top 5 standings could train with the men's and the rest couldn't, and that was like a very big problem. So we've seen that over and over, but definitely less pressure. But I think also where there's less rider, maybe the protection won't matter as much as for the men. But it's the fact that there's less women in the final is definitely not cool.
Who's number 4 in the women's? Do we know?
Nina Hoffman. Nina Hoffman.
You see that? Yeah, that could be big.
Yeah.
Be protecting a very small number of riders there.
So, I don't really see any point in fixing things that aren't broken, but at the same time, don't really fear change. This whole thing might be better. You don't know, do you, until you've tried it? But surely, kind of in order of fairness, you need to tell riders that at the start of the preceding season that this is going to happen. Rather than just announcing it at the end of the year, just as everyone's getting ready for that season. Would it have been as big an issue if you'd have had a year, if everyone had known at the end of next season, this is how it's going to go?
Well, look at Laurie, like that crash he had at Val d'Isole.
Yep.
Cost him that top 5. Like, so I think the bigger issue that you've just touched on is that they're not consulting riders. In a sport that is extremely dangerous, huge risks, like those guys at the top who are, and girls who are really going for it, they are throwing their lives on the line every single time they do one of the fast ones, and they have not been consulted. And I think it's wrong. Like consulting someone like myself, it's pointless. The top riders should be consulted. So
I work with, like, in the day job, I work with unions with 500,000 members. I work with PLCs that are on the footsie, and change is like a massive thing that they have to manage, and I see them doing it all the time. And this is, in my experience, the worst way to do it, which is just there's no consultation, there's been no explanation, it's just this is how it's going to be. And nothing gets everybody's backs up like that. If they'd have come out and said, we have won a competitive tender process with the UCI on the basis that we need to deliver X, Y, and Z. The only way we're going to deliver X, Y, and Z is by doing this, 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 and this. And that will hopefully increase the revenues like this, and this you will see more exposure, you will see this, you will see this. Here's our research that backs this up. Here's a fully presented case for why we're doing it. If you could make some sense of it, if you could go away and go, all right, I might not agree with it, but I understand it. It softens the blow, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the main issue, because I'm convinced that they have all that.
Yeah.
Like they have all the research, all the experts and everything, but they just, for some reason that I can't quite grasp yet, they don't want to share it like in advance.
Yeah.
They're just imposing stuff, and that's like the big thing that I'm trying to like change with the association. Is like that we get the riders involved, and we can kind of like develop like a kind of a trustworthy relationship, because right now I feel like ESO sees the riders as enemies, and I don't want that, because riders should be the allies, you know, to make the sports better.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm not quite sure why that's I'm working on it. We all working on it to try to like construct this really positive relationship, because it's not all bad. Like, we have a huge investment in the sport, and that's a huge opportunity. And from like a logical perspective, you would say, okay, this company has taken over. They have a huge pressure on them. They need to deliver. They try their best, you know?
Yeah.
They are 100%. Otherwise, it won't be right. But they are trying their best. But like, they won't tell like that they are. It doesn't seem like they are, because there's no communication. And that's a little bit the hard stage that we are right now, and try to go past that and try to work with each other a bit more.
So
a couple of things that like I'll keep trying to do this as quick as possible. But firstly, like, I know people at ESO, I know Chris, I know Rory, and they're great people, and I know for a fact what Emilie just said is right. They will be trying to do this so it works for everyone. But if you gave the top 10 guys and girls some iPhones and said, go on your social media and publicize that next weekend you're all getting together and having a race, people would watch it. I'd watch it.
Yeah.
If it was just them in the woods having a race. And the point I'm making is, without the riders, this does not happen.
Yeah.
But without other parts of it, it could still function. The riders are the be-all and end-all of this, and the fact they're not being consulted is wrong. And the other thing I was about to say is, I feel like they're just trying to sort out what's going on at the pinnacle of the sport. So many people at the moment can turn up to World Cups. You can apply to your national federation as a UK expert rider. I mean, they don't have that category in America, but you know, a lower level elite rider can apply and go and have a go at a World Cup. They know they're not going to qualify, like they're not going to, but they go and gain the experience. And the reason that's happening is because there is no route to World Cups that really makes sense.
Yeah.
Like UK national races, even the IXS Cups, they don't come up as like Formula 2, or if in a different sport in like football, they're not like the Championship behind the Premier League. There is nothing below it. Whereas if, rather than just trying to fix the problem at the top, where they're trying to reduce these riders down from 200 to 30, give people other events, other races to go to that are still regarded as high-level races, and change the point system so it's harder for people to actually get to World Cups in the first place, then they're creating something with more of a development pathway into World Cup racing without having to just piss people off.
Yeah.
I think what I've just said makes sense. But
no, I think they will. Like, I'm pretty sure that they will try. And I've talked to numerous people at ESO about this. It takes a little bit more time.
Yeah,
for sure.
But that's the long-term goal. And I think eventually we'll end up at 30 and 10 if there is a right like second series, third series, whatever, and nobody will have a problem with that anymore.
No.
I just think on a very personal level, the changes are coming too fast. Like everything's happening too fast. Like we've heard and everyone heard that mostly nothing's going to change for next year. And I've said so on the podcast because I was convinced it was the case. And then this comes up and you're like, wow, actually, like this is kind of crazy. So I understand the reason, but I think, like you said, nothing is quite broken with the current format. Like it's working well. So you want to do it better? Maybe just
cover the
try
juniors,
to take over and like the junior race on another day is a very good idea. There's a lot of great ideas out there, but maybe not all at once, you know?
Yeah.
So one of the other changes was the start order. Do you understand it?
Jack, please help us on this. I'm not a native
my-
English speaker because I'm like, what the hell?
I can read out what I've put in the script if you want.
Yeah,
You want
read
me
it
to
out.
that?
help me.
So the start order for the semi and final will be based on the reverse results for the last qualifying round. Fastest rider starts last. Fine. Except for the protected riders and the fastest 5 men and 2 women by order of their last qualifying result reversed. So that means that...
Honestly, I think there's better things we can be talking about.
Yeah, let's
Like,
forget that.
I
Let's
think,
move on.
yeah, like who cares? I like it, like we've said, overcomplication for no reason.
But that's good. But if we can't fathom it out or get our heads around it, the average fan, isn't that just overcomplicating it for her? They're
And
going to
they
be sat
probably
there going,
don't give
I
a
have
shit.
no idea who's coming next because...
Yeah.
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 No, but I just think they wanted to say that the last 5 guys and the last 2 women, whether they're protected or not, are the fastest from the last qualifying round.
Yeah.
So there's no
right,
protected rider that goes in between.
Right.
Maybe that's the point.
Right.
It's,
Okay.
But,
it's
yeah.
protecting someone's performance
Maybe.
on
And
the day,
that would
Right.
be that
which
would
I
be
agree with.
Mhm.
So
that's
then
right.
what's the point in keeping everybody numbers 1 to 10 throughout the season? That's a direct contradiction of that reward to that person's performance. But anyway, like I said, we could be here all night and we got Richie joining us in 5 minutes. So
So the other major change was that the UCI previously had an open policy on junior women to try and promote that category. If you entered, you were in the final. That's no longer the case. There's just 10 junior women in the final. Good thing or bad thing, Emmy?
let me go first, because
Yeah, go on.
after Emmy's voiced her opinion, I might get scared and not say what I think. So I'm going to be bold and go first. I think it's a good thing because I think not doing that devalues the race. They can just turn up, crack on. And I coach one of the junior women from this year, Beth. She's a great rider, great girl. And I've seen her on quali day and she's just chilling. There's no stress, there's nothing. And I think as Emmy said in one of the messages she sent, it doesn't help them when they get to elite. So I think this is a good thing. I think it's going to help them prepare for what's waiting. Go on, Em. Am I wrong?
Yeah, right. I agree with you. Almost 99%. I've seen it with Jenna last year as well. Like, and I don't think it's the best preparation for moving on to elite because that's the only category that doesn't have like quali stress. And now there's gonna be top 10 moving on. So I think it's good that they can like try to deal with this stress. Otherwise, when you move on to elite, then you have to qualify for top 15 and then top 10 for finals. It's gonna be like a whole different game. So you're doing you should be doing all your learning in the junior category. So it's good that hopefully that won't like affect the numbers of people participating, but them having the race the day before, it's also like, and broadcasted would be also a good thing.
So last thing on this, no mention of prize money yet. Last time I checked, I think it was around €1,000 for winning an EWS, so I wouldn't be too optimistic if I was a rider that huge sums will be on offer. You haven't heard anything whether there'll be prize money for semi-finals or anything like that?
No, I've been in touch with some UCI people are working at UCI, and it's the UCI that actually decides the scheme for the prize money. So far I've heard, and obviously I've heard different things that were completely untrue in the past, but there's no changes to prize money this year.
Okay.
So that's also something that's a little bit problematic. If you do 3 times three full runs in 1.5 days and have the same prize money is a lot of effort, you know. So we'll see if maybe in the years to come there's going to be a better reward for this effort, but for now, no.
We were going to do
everybody's team. Sorry, George. Everyone's team membership fees have gone up. Both for regular mountain bike teams, which is what I run, our fees have doubled. I'm not sure if elite fees have doubled, but anyway, everyone's have gone up, and they're basing that on the fact that we're going to get better media coverage from Warner Brothers. So in the next couple of years, we need to be able to see the benefits from that, pulling in more sponsors, more prize money, and if that doesn't happen, then what are we paying for?
So. 100%, I can see that. So I had a whole section here recapping on all the team rumours, but we're running out of time because Richie's going to be waiting for us in a minute. Any team rumours that you're aware of that we didn't know about?
I can add a couple.
Yeah. But because I saw on your list you put Oliver Zoir.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
And I thought I thought we talked about it, but I've heard he's going to FMD.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that'd be
good. Rider. Everyone's going to be on Canyons next year. The new commentator.
Yeah.
I spoke with Jacob Dixon, his dad, earlier, and obviously very fast, very talented Irish rider. And in my head, he's always older than he is, but he's still only 24, maybe just 5. Yeah, exactly. Everyone thinks he's older because he's been around so long. But I'm told he's got a new team. He's been on Mondraker. I'm told he's got a team, so that's exciting. And I've also just heard from Roger Vieira, everyone's favourite Brazilian.
Yeah.
I messaged him earlier because I know he's talking
to Rog.
Yeah, I know he's been talking to lots of teams off the back of his season. But Roger's confirmed he sent out a lot of proposals, spoke to a lot of people, but he's staying with his current setup. He's staying with More Large and doing his own thing with SR Suntour. Didn't hear back from anyone. And I think for Rog, I don't think it's a bad thing. What he's doing is working for him. And if he can now back up what he's done this year with an even better season and start pushing top 20, he might get some offers for 2024. But they're the two things I could add.
Cool. Well, as
before we actually go, George, something I do want to add, because I feel like we've been so harsh on, or I personally, I feel like I've been harsh on ESO and on the changes. I wish them all the best, and I really do hope they do a good job of it. And every single bit of communication they have sent has been extremely detailed. You can tell that they're putting an awful lot of time and effort into it. And although I have been fairly critical of what we're kind of seeing, who knows?
We all want it to be successful, don't we?
Yeah, I am open-minded to it, and good luck to them. So obviously I'm going to be there, so I'll get a first-hand experience, and let's hope they do it right.
Well, as mentioned earlier, there's some big changes to Enduro as well, and we'll be back with Richie Rude after these messages. He last appeared on the pod in episode 2 of season 3, and I'm delighted to welcome Richie Rude back to the show. How are we doing, Richie?
Hey. Yeah, doing pretty good.
Excellent.
Glad to be back.
Where in the world are you right now?
Yeah, just at home now in Connecticut in the U.S. Just got back home from a little trip to North Carolina. But yeah, doing good.
And all set for Christmas?
Yeah, I think so. Ready as you can be, I guess.
Yeah. You've got a big one? Is the family coming round? Or?
Yeah, going to go see the family. They're close by, so easy trip,
Cool.
Nice. Right then, Richie, I'm going to dive straight in. So after a pretty barren 2020, how good was it to go racing again in 2021?
Yeah, it was pretty great. And started a bit later in the year just because of the schedule. So I got a bit more riding preseason, which was nice. But yeah, man, felt really good. Like we had a lot of those back-to-back races during the weeks and kept the racing like pretty exciting. And yeah, this was so nice to get back.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've just mentioned there the back-to-back and the exciting racing. I'm just going to run through the first part of the season. Obviously, you had this huge battle with Jack, and written down, it is impressive. It's almost as if there weren't other people there when you read it out. Valdefassa, round 1, you were first. Valdefassa, round 2, you were second. Latuile, round 3, you were first. Latuile, round 4, you were second. And then both rounds. In Ludenville, you were second. And I think were you first on the way down that last stage and chain came off? Is that right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was first or in second, but yeah, I was up there.
You were there again.
Yeah.
How intense was that first part of the season once you got a couple of races in and it was just you and Jack? Was it as intense, I would think?
Yeah, for sure. Like having like all those races so close to each other is definitely a bit hard, especially mentally just to like go every single weekend. And so, yeah, it was a bit about trying to recover and kind of refresh for the next race. And yeah, I think by that second Latwil race, I was ready for a bit of a break.
Yeah, I can imagine. And obviously, we've got a downhill World Cup in Latwil next year. Can you let us into a little bit of what we can expect? Do you think it'll be a good venue?
Oh yeah, I think so. For downhill, they got some good steeps there. So I feel like, as long as the track's ridden in a bit, I think it'll be pretty good.
Nice. Okay. So we then move on to Crans Montana. You were first and Jack was 10th. That was the first round where you guys weren't 1-2, which is just crazy. On to finale, you were 5th and Jack won, which meant you were pretty level coming into Innerleithen. Tell us a bit about the thing that happened at Innerleithen, because obviously there was a fairly controversial disqualification there.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty funny, really. Just, I don't know, not paying attention exactly to, to kind of how they tape stuff. And for some reason in my head, it seemed good to stay between the tape, but not the Enduro World Series flags they put up. So, yeah, I thought I was on a crafty line, but ended with a bit of a DQ at the bottom of my run, which was a big bummer because, yeah, now I was on the pro stage. I was on the Saturday, and then, then my team manager let me know that I was DQ'd for Sunday. So huge bummer to like not be able to contest like the race, but it was also almost like stress relieving, being like, all right, I can just chill now. This is nice. But,
I know you said, I think you said it was pretty dumb on your part, but I thought it was pretty harsh. A DQ.
Yeah, I for sure thought they could have like even if they gave me and Lukazik like a 5-minute penalty, and still let us race and kind of have it. You could still like kind of see how the day could play out, but that could also be more frustrating if you did well. But it would have been nice just to ride on that Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was there. I was at the event, and I'm a team manager as well. And I remember seeing the flags, and because I don't race enduro routinely, I remember seeing them and thinking, do I need to go through those or not? And my team manager, Brian, kind of said, well, let's not take any risks. Do you kind of did you discuss it with anyone before you made the decision, or was it just literally in the moment, I'm taking the fastest line to the finish, I'm going that way?
We like kind of talked about it, and like none of us really thought about kind of like what if it like was not in the rules or some per se.
Yeah.
And then when I kind of came off the thing, I was like, cool, I'm doing it, whatever.
Lesson learned. Yeah, I mean, my feeling is similar to George. Like something needed to be done because obviously, rules are rules, as we know. But I think a disqualification after such a tight season, I'm sure Jack would have rather you been racing. So anyway, P2 in the world. Were you happy at the end of the year, or did you look back on it going, fuck?
Oh yeah, I was super stoked. Like it's hard to not be happy with like being on the overall podium, and with it being like first kind of having like 2020 off and then racing back again. It was it felt good to put a full season in and be back like in that number 2 spot. Because prior to that I like haven't had a full season per se, and so it was nice just to have a solid result.
Tell us a bit about Jack Moir, because I heard some rumours that you two didn't really get on, but then I go on your Instagram and you're full of nothing but praise for him.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jack. Like we were on Yeti together for a year briefly, and I get along with him. Yeah, we're like similar age and stuff. So yeah.
I didn't know he'd ridden for Yeti. And what year?
Yeah, he did a brief year in 2013, I want to say.
Right. Okay. So, at the start of 2022, I sensed a bit of frustration on your part that there was a lot of hype before the start of the downhill season, and that wasn't replicated with Enduro. Would frustrated be a pretty accurate description?
I mean, I think it was definitely cool watching all like the downhill lead up and everything. And sometimes I feel like enduro needs like a bit of that just to feel the same. But I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty open to kind of however the season starts.
Yeah. Did you feel like when we spoke with Win on the last episode, we talked about that the perhaps hadn't been as promoted as well the last couple of years. I don't even know if they were doing videos in 2022. Did you feel that? Do you feel like it hasn't been promoted as well?
I mean, I think they tried to do a good job of like pushing out kind of like stuff through their Instagram and everything. And I kind of feel like with, us top 3 guys, like maybe we could have like some more, I guess, content through them. Like, how like me and Jack battled all the way through 21, and then, they had good stuff during the season, but then I don't know, like we never really talked much to EWS in the off season.
Yeah, it's all about stories, isn't it? If you've got stories, that's what makes content, basically. Well, makes good content. You need a good story, and you've not been short of stories there.
That might be one of the things we see improve now. Warner Brothers are involved. Like, it's what they do, right? So hopefully that'll be one of the benefits that we get from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hi, Richie.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So we'll get to the new changes announced last week a bit later, but let's keep chatting 2022 first. So Bex Barona and Casper Woolley joined the Yeti team that year. Tell us a bit about what's been like having those guys on the team.
Yeah. Me and Casper like traveled with us in 21, so it was like he'd kind of been with us for a year, and then kind of had a short-lived season in 22, which was a bit of a bummer because it was fun having him with me, and he was kind of pushing me quite hard because I don't want to get beat, so kept me on my toes, and that was quite fun for him to go out for his race this season. He was really looking forward to it, and then it's been great having Bex on the team. It brings a little different dynamic, and I think she's been such a great fit with us, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
I remember the last time you were on the pod, you were talking about this guy called Casper who you'd been riding with and training with, and I just remember like I'm not 100% when we were doing the interview. I was like, I'm not 100% sure who Casper is, but he sounds fast, and then obviously it's become clear now because he hurt himself as well, didn't he, at the end of the season in that pump track crash, I think.
Yeah.
So, but he's a fast rider, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he's real quick.
Are you gonna grow a mullet as well, Richie? No, that Bex is baddest mullet in the game now.
I know hers was a next level this season, but no, I'm gonna pass on the old mullet stage.
Okay. So like you said, Casper had a rough season, broken back in Innerleithen. So back to the scene of the ground. The first EWS of the season was in Innerleithen, and you took the win. So how did that feel?
Yeah, it felt great. Like I think it's always pretty nice to start off with a good result. Like it puts a bit of confidence in you, like kind of in the training or in the prep you've done leading up to the season. So yeah, it was a great feeling there. Like I feel like it was a good start race too. Like we weren't, super high in the mountains doing 10+ minute stages, but just pretty high intensity dodging trees and Innerleithen. So yeah, I was pretty stoked.
Yeah, so you started 22 the similar way that you did in 2021, so very strong. Second at Run 2 in Patton, first in Val di Fassa. So you're leading the series, but obviously it's still tight between you and Jesse. And you've been 1, 2, and 3 all the races, like you were with Jack. Is battling Jesse any different than battling Jack?
I mean, I kind of felt like it was pretty similar. Like, I mean, we were both kind of trading off wins here and there, or so I feel like in that aspect it was pretty similar. I mean, they have totally different styles. But
yeah, for sure.
as far as racing, I felt like it was pretty close.
Yeah, so you are US national champion again that year, and you're part American, so I guess it feels pretty good to wear the sleeve, right?
Yeah, I think it's always good. I haven't been able to make it to national champs that much, so being able to go there and get the sleeve is always a great thing.
Moving on to Whistler, for round 4, and I think you were either first or second on every stage until the last one, and then disaster struck and you ended up 44th. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, me and Jesse were kind of, battling out like had been during the season. He kind of had a pretty good lead, it seemed like, throughout the day. Like he was riding really well in Whistler, is kind of home area. And so I was just trying to keep up and, get the podium if I could. And yeah, went into the last stage after a pretty long day. And there was the new kind of big jump section on 1199, I think it's a trail. And yeah, just pushed a little too hard, I guess, in one of the berms into the big drop and peeled my tire off the rim. So that was pretty big bummer, because I feel like for me, it seems like Whistler is, win or get 40th or something. So that definitely hurt for the feelings of the overall, like points wise.
How long did it cost you getting the tire back on? Because did you manage to get it back on?
Yeah, I got it mounted back up and put it back on. I think I lost 3 minutes.
Yeah, but it cost.
I just thought it was worth to throw it back on and then to try and ride it down or even DNF.
Jesse took the win there. Did you sense at the time that result might cost you?
Yeah, I think as soon as it happened, I immediately thought about that.
Imagine that's a pretty bad feeling.
Yeah, when you're like 10 minutes from the bottom, it's it's like, man, that is not good.
So on to round 5 in Burke. 6 stages. Jack Moir wins the first 4, but he's only 7 seconds ahead of you. You win the final 2 stages, and he's second on both of those stages, but you managed to put 11 seconds into him to take the win. Those last 2 stages were 2 of the longer ones. Do you prefer it when it starts getting around 6 minutes and over?
Yeah, I guess it seemed like it. Kind of the beginning of the day, we had some shorter, like kind of intense stages, and I think it's kind of hard to distance yourself unless you're kind of really on track, I guess. But yeah, I think with those couple of longer ones, I guess I just kind of flowed right and got that time back. But yeah, it was kind of a great feeling to going from kind of being in that second position to like clawing back that time.
Do you manage it differently? Like if it's a short stage, if it's a 2.5, 3 minute stage, is it just like a downhill race for you? Are you just flat out from the gate? And on the 6 minute plus ones, do you strategically either do you ride a lower percentage, or do you know there's places where you can recover?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the stage a bit, but I think the shorter ones, if you know yourself well enough, you can kind of just go for it, and you kind of have to take it much like a downhill stage and just give it your all.
Yeah.
But the longer ones, I guess like depending, if it's pedally or if it's physical in certain sections, you definitely have to, hold back here and there. Like I know the one stage in Burke, it was kind of like a technical trail up top, and then the bottom was pretty pedally, so you wanted to keep a little bit for the bottom so you can just kind of just lose time there.
Yeah, 100%. So Sugarloaf round 6, stage results: 3rd, 2nd, 1st, 22nd, 101st, 106th, 21st in the overall. You injured your shoulder, is that right?
Yeah, on stage 5, I fractured my scapula, so that didn't feel very good.
But you carried on.
Yeah, I could still like roll down the hill, It was pretty painful, but I thought if I could at least roll through this race, it'll keep me on some points.
Yeah. So how long after Sugarloaf was Crans Montana?
I think it was 4 weeks, like almost on the dot.
So 4 weeks later, you took ninth. You were 50 seconds back on Jack Moir. Were you fit to ride in Crans Montana? And if what percentage fitness wise were you?
Yeah, I think like kind of cardio wise, I think I was fine.
Yeah.
I tried to ride on the road on my mountain bike as much as I could when I was home.
Yeah.
It was quite hard to sit in a kind of hole in the handlebar because every time my bar twitched, like my shoulder was quite painful.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much like we went to Morzine the week before Crans Montana. I was still on the road then, and then it was kind of weird. Like the Friday of Crans Montana, like the pain kind of started going away. I was pretty happy about that because I could barely ride like a week before, and yeah, my legs and stuff felt good, but the upper body was a bit weak, I think. So it was definitely a little frustrating, just feeling like you're okay, but the pace was, back 10-15%.
I just have a little question here for you, Richie. When you have a crash like that during an EWS race and it's not the last stage, is there like, can you tape yourself? Like, can you go to someone at some point of the race, or is it like, are you on your own? How does it work?
Well, I think we were fortunate with Sugarloaf that we could go to the pits between each of the stages. Like like sometimes, you might go from stage 5 to 6 and you might be out out in the woods somewhere. So you kind of be on your own. But I got to go back to the pits quickly before the last stage. And on our team we have Amanda. She has like massage and stuff, and so she just checked me out. And I don't think we put any tape on it just because I was sweaty and stuff. So yeah, just kind of regrouped, and then just went back up for 6, hoping that I could be able to at least roll down the hill.
But this is kind of nice because like when you have a crash like that and you're like on your own and you're like, wow, what did I do to myself? Like it can be kind of like overwhelming. So it's good that you could do that.
How you said about the pain seemed to go away on the Friday before Crans Montana. Do you think that's just the adrenaline?
I feel like it must have been, or at least like having that hope of wanting to ride. It was like every day it seemed like it got a little better, and I think just riding a little bit of trail must have just kind of helped it here and there.
Yeah, I think sometimes the mind can take over, can't it? It can block out to a degree, obviously not completely. Louidenville for the final round. You finished 7th with Jesse in 6th, 2nd in the overall for the second year running with Martin Mays in 3rd. The shoulder injury, when you look back on the season, that ended the title push for you, did it? Yeah,
I think so. I think Whistler was a bit of a big hit for that, but I think the second thing with the shoulder injury pushed you back quite a bit. Yeah,
because just looking at the results, you did well in Louidenville the season before, so you'd have probably been better than 7th. I would have suggested you could probably have pulled some points back there.
Yeah, I think so, but I was definitely hoping for the best, but it was hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you finished the season with the EWS race in finale. You took 3rd, just 21 seconds back on Adrian Daly. Tell us a bit about e-bike racing, because you're a big, powerful guy. On the last episode, Wynn said that he thinks e-bike racing it benefits the little guys. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I definitely feel like, at least with like a lot of the power stages, I think I was losing like 7 seconds on those to Adrian. So for sure, I had a bit of a weight penalty, but I think on the flip side too, like I don't think I noticed the weight of the e-bike as much.
Yeah.
So like maybe during the day, we race, I don't know, like 20 stages total. So it's like, I guess throughout the day, like maybe I feel less fatigued, like through the body, just throwing the bike around. But definitely hard to pull back any sort of time when you get crushed going uphill.
Yeah, I was about to say, so you're probably not a fan of the technical uphills.
I think they're fun. They're super hard. Like they're hard technically and physically. Like it's very hard on the legs.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand. Like I'm a downhill rider too, and I kind of like these challenges on the e-bike. That it makes it fun because you get up stuff you're like, surely not, and then you're like, whoa, like it's actually quite fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the future a little bit. Big announcement last week that the EWS is going to become a mountain bike World Cup. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky. I feel like we're kind of waiting for it to happen with the UCI coming in. I guess it's cool we get that kind of designation of being the World Cup, not just like World Enduro race. But I think it's exciting.
Wynn said in the last episode that we had him on that he doesn't really like the direction of Enduro's taking in the last years, and it used to be like huge events spread over multiple days on lots of trails, and the racing has slimmed down. And the announcement last week was that the racing will now be held on one single day. So is that the direction you support?
I mean, I kind of liked the format like last year, how we had like the kind of like the pro stage. So it was like kind of a 2-day race, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely sometimes does feel pretty short when, you're 2 stages through Sunday and you're like, oh, I only got like 2 or 3 more. Like it feels quite short. But I think for the intensity of racing, it kind of brings it up a bit. I just hope they don't feel like too short or too easy. But I mean, I think it maybe could like bring up the intensity of the racing. I don't know. I guess it depends like kind of the course they have. But yeah, it definitely seems like some people like the more traditional style and some like the new style.
Yeah. Well, the racing definitely got closer, like insanely close the last like few seasons. Wayne also said that he thinks that there might be a return to downhill for you in 2023. Is there something you're looking at, and what would that be like full time, or I guess alongside enduro for you next week?
Yeah, I was looking into it. Kind of with how we were like having races in the same venues, kind of made it a bit more of a kind of interesting thing to do. And there's 2 races at the end of the season that are post enduro season, so I think those might be something we might target if we can. Just it'd be kind of like a no stress thing because we did end of our season.
Yeah. Has last week's announcement influenced your decision anyway? Like, to me, it seems like if I was in your position, like if I was thinking about going back to downhill, last week's announcement has made it harder to come into downhill, and it's promoted enduro to be in a World Cup, which has pushed enduro forward. So I think if I was you, I'd be saying, "Oh, I'm staying enduro now."
Yeah, I think it was definitely interesting trying to understand the downhill format. I mean, I guess if we can get in and race whatever the semis and be on video and stuff, that would be cool. But yeah, having the the World Cup status for enduro definitely brings up the street cred, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess with the bike companies, how many years have you got remaining with Yeti?
I recently signed another 3-year contract, so I'll be with them for a couple.
And are they keen for you to get back to downhill, because they don't have a downhill bike in the range at the moment? So, what would you ride?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty excited to kind of see me get back into it if I wanted to.
Would it be a SB 165 with some 40s? Is that?
I mean, I kind of want to ride a DH bike, but I guess we'll see what we have.
So there might be something in the works there. I mean, Yeti's got such a history with downhill, hasn't it? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, they were great. So for enduro, are you still full 29?
Yeah, full 29.
And if you were to develop a downhill bike, would you stay the same way?
I mean, just like looking at what everybody else is doing, it seems like mullet's kind of the more of the way to go.
Yeah, I would say probably. What do you think, Emmy? Would you go?
Well, for me, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I've ridden like the full 29 from pivot because I didn't have any other option. But yeah, there's also something new coming at some point, so it's probably going to be a marathon. I'm hoping so. We might.
Yeah.
So
with my size,
knowing what you're like as an athlete, you're not coming back to downhill for a top 20. What would be the aim?
I mean, it'd be nice to get in there for sure. I don't know. I think it's hard sometimes. Like, I obviously want to do well, and I think getting a top 20 would be a kind of a good goal just to start.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's hard to judge kind of the speed, I guess, you have to ride at versus enduro. I mean, it's always quite shocking sometimes when you ride with so many races downhill and you get like gapped on a trail or something. But yeah, I don't know. Pretty open to it.
Have you done any downhill races in recent years?
No, I was gonna do one 2 years ago, but our schedules kind of overlap on the race weekend, so I only really did the qualifying.
So we're going to be catching up with Todd next. Tell us a bit about training for downhill versus enduro, because one of the things we discussed on the last episode was that it's getting harder to do both. You know,
yeah, I definitely see that kind of in people who do both races. Like I feel like it's hard to focus on two, and you might give and take a little bit here and there. But I mean, I think we're just going to continue to, I guess, train for enduro racing, and I think over the years I've gotten almost a little better at some of the shorter stages, I guess, and obviously I'm great at the longer ones, but I think I'll just be trying to pick up that little bit of intensity down low, and maybe ditching some of the thought process of, I have 5 more stages in the day versus I just got to put it down and be perfect.
It'd be so amazing to see you come back, because there's rumours obviously Sam Hill's going to come back as well for another season, and then you've got the young kids Jackson and Jordan going in. I mean, if it isn't exciting enough,
a lot going on for sure.
Yeah, it'd be mega. So we're pretty deep into the off season now. Are you back training again?
Yeah, back to a bit of a routine. I feel like it took a little longer to get back into the swing of things this year. Rode a bit in finale with Todd after the season, so that was pretty good. And yeah, just back into going to the gym and sitting on trainer when I can.
Yeah, because you guys it's a pretty early start, isn't it, for the EWS? Is that Tasmania?
Yeah, back in Tasmania, end of March, and I don't think we've had an early start for a few years now. Yeah,
so will you be breaking for Christmas?
I mean, I always like to keep moving, so probably not.
You're like the opposite of me, Richie. It's your birthday on the 1st of January. You'll be 28, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So just coming into your prime now. 28 is probably prime. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, hoping so, right?
Yeah. Cool. Well, look, thanks for making the time to come on the pod today. Have a great Christmas and New Year.
Thank you.
Birthday, and all the best for 2023.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you at some downhill races as well as
I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. You need to come. You have definitely enough power for. There's a few pedal strokes that you need to put in, so
yeah,
you'll be fine.
Sweet.
Cool. We'll be back with Todd Schumlick after these messages. I am delighted to welcome back to the pod the busiest man in bikes, Todd Schumlick. How's it going?
Good. Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Is this your? I was trying to work this out actually, without going unlucky. 3rd or 4th appearance?
I believe 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah. You came on with Richie.
Yeah.
Then there was one with Matt Simmons, and I think that was the last one we recorded in a studio before.
Yeah, maybe. You'd probably remember more than me, but Matt, I don't remember the Matt one.
No, I think you were on separately. I think, yeah, Matt, we recorded with Matt in person in a studio, and then you came in maybe by a Zoom link or something like that. I can't.
Yeah, that makes more sense. So
it was pre-pandemic, so.
You could convince me almost anything right now. I think it just I had enough short bird.
So there's so much to talk about. Let's start with Intense Factory Racing. You guys went big last season with the addition of Dak and Joe Breeden alongside Aaron and Seth. As a team manager, it must really excite you when you bring that much talent on board.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd say that you try not to think that, that there's, I don't know. The short answer would be yes, it was awesome. It's like adding more, as you have more riders on the team, you have more opportunity to probably see success, right? It's just, that's just sheer numbers, right? But then, which riders, you go and you choose. And I mean, Aaron and I communicated a lot. We had a lot of interviews with everybody. We tried to also, we don't look for the best riders or who we think are the quickest. It's like our first goal is to sort of make sure that it's a team that can, a group that can work together and have the same goals. And so just enjoyment, because first and foremost, it's just like, there's a lot of traveling. There's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of spending time together. And I think if that part's good first, then and your goals are kind of similar, then you can set yourself up for better success. So, we had lots of interviews before, and it was just, okay, let's see if we are going to work for those riders, and then if those riders are going to work for us. So it's got to be a two-way street. I often don't go into it like, oh, we're the decision makers. We're, we're up here on our big high horse or whatever. No, I really don't approach it that way. I'm like, hey, this is the way we do it, and let them make the choice as well. Like, say to them, do we sound right for you guys? And I think we did that. So it's good when it turns out, and you could say that with Joe, I literally just talked to somebody last week about this, and it's like, oh, it's when it doesn't turn out the way you want it, let's be honest, it didn't. And to have somebody hurt and injured and stuff, but just to see Joe's determination and, if anything, I think Aaron and I have tried to get him to pump the brakes sometimes, and just like him just doing so much. And then Dakota, they're totally two different. It's been so awesome. Like, I hope I did half for them what they did for me. They did a lot for me. So,
So Dak took third and Aaron fourth at the final round in Val di Sole. You got team of the day, which meant Dak finished 16th in the overall, Aaron 8th. Both riders in the top 10 at Worlds. You must have been happy with the season.
Yeah, we were all super happy for sure, because we had a few tough years, and I've been down that path before, whether it was Norco Factory Racing previous to this, where you start the first year and you're a little bit, I always say it's a little bit ignorance is bliss. Like, I didn't know. Like, somebody wanted me to have a bigger team, and they give you more money, and they give you some big riders. And me and Blinky were like, Sam Blinketsop, we're like, let's try and figure this out together. Like, I might be team owner and manager, but let's figure out how to do this. And you kind of, I don't know, maybe you overthink it. Maybe you underthink it. I'm not sure. I think we kind of overdid it. We overcooked ourselves a bit. And, I've always said, like, I learned a lot through that experience, because we had 3 really rough, like we had 4 years. I had 4 years with Norco, and, the first year was pretty good. Sam finished the same as he did the year before. And let's be honest, he's kind of like your rock star. He's sets the bar for the team, and he had gotten 9th, and that was what he got the year before with Lapierre and Loic and Loris. So we were like, I think that's pretty good, but we were like super ambitious. And then I think we just, almost took on too much. And I always say it's my new thing, it's kind of cheesy, but like, it's like a coffee cup. To me, I used to want to fill it right to the top. because get the maximum amount of that coffee cup. Like if you're going to go get a cup of coffee, fill it all the way up. And then you realize all you're really doing is setting yourself up for more stress, because you move around, you have to do things, and you're spilling it, you're pissed off, it's all over you, it's all over somebody else. You really didn't enjoy that coffee because all you did was try and get more out of it, and you just spilled it. So I've learned especially with Aaron, like, let's fill that cup to coffee to, 2/3 of a cup or 3/4 of a cup. And then you enjoy that coffee more. You can move around. You're not restrained by that coffee. And so I think we learned that going into the Norco, because our 4th year was really good with Norco, and sometimes people don't realize this, and they're talking about all this team stuff. And Emilie can tell you about this. It's like everybody is under the pressure. It's not just the rider. It's also the management. It's the mechanics. Everybody's responsible. And so, you're only as good as your last race sometimes, it truly is. Sometimes, it's like we're all friends and bros, and our sponsors are like, yeah, it's awesome, they love you. But when you go sit at the table again in October or whenever that is, they kind of remember pretty quickly what your performances were like and what you did for the brand, like social media wise or whatever. So, that summer, even though they're looking like they're super relaxed, it's going to come back either to be yay or it's going to haunt you a bit. So I knew on that 4th year with Norco, I just had to really figure some shit out. And I brought in a consultant to help me, somebody I was luckily from MotoGP that watched us at our last race and gave us a lot of good advice. And that was pretty fortunate because I couldn't afford somebody like this, but through a friend of a friend, they got somebody in, and they really just, and I said, like, nobody was off limits, including me. And I was like, I probably got the most shit of everybody. And I was like, I don't believe there's bad staff. I think there's just bad owners and managers. Truly, I do really believe that. I really believe that I'm responsible to set the tone. And so with our team, with Intense Factory Racing, I think we went into it and I was like, oh geez, like first year, second year, Jack Moir left the team, and didn't really want to go down that path that we were going on, which was, let's be honest, our program was, Aaron's really ambitious. He wants to develop, his own program. He wants to go down. He doesn't want to just fight the system. He's not that guy. He's quite responsible to sponsors. It's unbelievable. Like even past tire sponsors or anybody, he's like so concerned by, and it's not ego. It's not like, oh, without me, they're going to be nothing. No, he's actually part of their development. He loves the development part. So with us, it was really cool to say, okay, we're developing, we've got injuries combined. And, we were a bit patient with that. And we just were able to continue trusting each other in the process. And then to see this year and see the boys, like you say, to see our guys, I guess, 3 of 4 boxes with Seth doing well, and then in the EWS, and then starting to make his way a bit on DH2. And then of course, Aaron and Dakota, who are, let's be honest again, they're kind of like, they're the top dogs on the program, right? Just, for truth. So, it was cool. The process was awesome. I try to be careful so you're not just gloating about the good stuff, because again, I've had more rough years than good years. So,
so Joe had that horrible crash at Fort William that you mentioned earlier. I saw him at Revolution a few weeks back, and I think he was having another surgery to have some of that metal work removed from his elbow. Has he had that surgery now, and what's his prognosis like for 2023?
Yeah, he's had the surgery, and it's to be short and sweet. It's looking good. Like he's doing all he can do. Again, with Joe, it's sometimes a matter of pumping the brakes. He's never a guy that sits around, and it's like, just make sure he doesn't overdo it. And he's very responsible. So it's we're on our way to, I think we're on our way to have him right. So yeah, it looks really good. He's back on bike and he's doing everything. Joe, pay attention. He's riding motos and trials and maybe horses. I don't know.
So tell us a bit about the bike, because it looked like you got a bike together that everyone was happy with. a bike that was capable of winning races, and I believe you've scrapped it and started something new. I believe it's a 6-bar design. Is that right?
Well, they just got done testing a while ago, maybe like 5-6 weeks ago, and I guess we're scrapping that bike because they came down on their first run, and I think maybe Dakota might have ghost walked his bike right into the forest and said, because he had ridden his new bike, the new bike, the 23 bike, and he just was like, no, we're not going back to the old bike anymore. Like, it did me good, but they quickly, both him and Aaron, knew that the new bike was a lot better, and also on the clock. So the clock wasn't going to lie, and then their feedback on it was really good. So yeah, the old bikes, last year's bike, 2022 bike is now behind us, and there was a lot learned with that bike. We tried to, we went out there, we 2 years ago, we tested all the other bikes. We got all the other bikes, and we wanted to see, there was just like a team of let's not have excuses, because it's just really easy to start going, our bike sucks, our tires suck or something. And it's like, well, let's go fix something. Let's go do it. And I mean, I won't get into the numbers, but Aaron was pretty much like, whatever it takes. Like, if we have to do something for free, if I need to take a pay cut, if I need to do whatever, I am, and there's, outside and it sounds like sometimes I'm just protecting Aaron. No, he can be a shithead too, just like any of us. No, I mean, we do. That's what makes us human. Yeah. But he's got a lot of experience, and there's times when I even doubted, I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm like, maybe it's, you think it's something else, like just something you can go work on. But I've learned that he's pretty wise when it comes to the experience with these big brands. And he was like, yeah, let's get this thing right. Let's go. It's a wild thing, right? Because I used to always say, swords win sword fights. Swords don't win sword fights. Sword fighters win sword fights. So meaning that I think the equipment was a little bit, the bikes were a little bit overstated. Yeah, hyped. And riders, I mean, I've been around it when we were with Norco. Remember how many bikes we went through? I mean, Harry Heath was one of the first guys to come back with that idler wheel. Harry built that, in not far from you, and in the UK. And we were just like, and I think it gets a little bit distracting, and and stuff. But on the other side, bikes can be shit, and bikes can not work. And these days there's so many good bikes, and it was important for us to go ride those bikes. And we just literally wanted to see what the guys were winning on, the common cells, the Specialized, the Treks. And we did it. And it just came back with, like we said, let's just take these bikes to the clock. Let's not just have our opinions. Let's go use just real world testing. And we did. And they came back quicker. So we were like, well, we got to figure out how to do the same thing and better. And it's going to be tough. And it's going to take some work, and we're going to have to probably sacrifice some performance for a bit. So to see it start coming around, and it started to roll, and there's a lot of other things too behind the scenes, personal lives, the mental game, training, all the above. Like the checklist was massive, and we weren't going to miss it. So, but the bike, since that's the topic we're on, we're on the new bike. Because this podcast is going to go after, when is this podcast played?
So we're recording it tonight on the 19th, and it's probably going to go out on Wednesday, so the 21st, if I can edit it tomorrow.
Well, there's the new bike.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, look how close I can get Emilie to the look at how I can get her to the camera.
This is like a world exclusive. When does it drop, Todd? Tomorrow.
You have no nose hairs at all, Emilie. I wish I could say the same. It's this bike is tomorrow.
That bike is on Emilie's Instagram in 15 minutes.
Nah.
No, it's sabotage.
I can't afford this type of mistakes. Now I'm rider's rep. I can't do this type of stuff. Need to be professional here.
Is the 6-bar something that might come in across the entire intense lineup? Is that what they're looking at? Developing from the top, or?
Yeah, it starts at the top for sure. Like we've got a new we've got that tracer that came out that Seth wanted to take, put on the EWS, and it worked out pretty good. But there's some flaws in that bike. They're not shy to say it. Like that's the one thing. It's really refreshing with these guys. Like Jeff Stieber is not he'll just, like, if anything, there's some people internally that say, Jeff, say less. Don't be so revealing. Don't be so transparent. He just doesn't give a shit, to be honest with you. Sometimes, like, he gives tons, but he all into the bike. He's not so concerned, I think, often by the politics and just the raw marketing. As people have even said it, like, oh, the bike could be this color, it should be this. Is e-bike, they said it looked fat, it looked dumb. There's all these things. Jeff is like numbers guy, like, make it fast, make it work. He is so focused on that part. I've learned from being around him, where I'm not going to throw the other brands I've worked with under the bus right now, but they're such marketing driven companies, very careful, very, very coordinated in their what we're communicating, what we're saying. And Intense is just like, let's go for it. Let's build the best bikes. We used to be known is, one of the, if not the top DH brand. I mean, people were running those bikes in under other labels, right? And so, and they kind of went back there, and they knew, it's like, they didn't just hire Aaron because they're like, oh, he's just going to come out and he's going to start winning on our bikes immediately. They were like, lots of conversation, and it was like, this is going to be a bit of a process, but let's bring our heads together and let's get this bike and get the world's fastest downhill bike. I can hype it up next year and say, this is how good it's going to be or not going to be. We'll let the numbers talk for themselves, and I will say it with a cocky smile, but I'd say let's bring it, because I think some people are going to be surprised by what we can do on this new bike. So I can confidently say that. So I look forward to this year.
Cool.
Nice. So, big announcement last week by the UCI and ESO about changes to downhill and enduro. We've talked about it in the intro, and we've talked about it with Richie as well. As a downhill team manager, what are your thoughts about the downhill rule changes?
Well, hey, Emilie, you're in the same boat, and I know it's not about you, but what's your immediate thoughts?
So we talked about it in the intro, and I mean, as like my personal opinion, I already said, like, there's a few good things. There's a couple of good things, I think, and there's also that semi-final format that I think could be problematic because it changes kind of the nature of the sport and that one-run magic. But that's something we ongoingly going through the riders at the moment, so it's kind of hard for me to talk about it. But for sure, in the next few days, we're gonna take position. Like the Riders Association is gonna take position on it. But yeah, as a team manager, I guess it's a little bit different for you because you have like a different perspective. So it will be interesting to hear what, like, from a team manager perspective, what would you think about that semi-final and everything that's been changing?
Well, first of all, you see, this is always going on, right? It's like our team managers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's constantly there's a blue dot there because somebody's, some guy named Bernard Kerr here is constantly. Gosh,
he's constantly in my messages too.
And then I see some guy named Petey.
Yeah,
sounds like some kind of dirty soil, but anyways, it's like, I think, honestly, here's my thoughts on it. First, we all have to define what success is, because before we say what's successful, not successful, some people, successful is a big house on the hill and helicopters and Ferraris, and other people I know, my friends, they want nothing. They want to live in the back of a camper van, and that's all the wealth in the world for them. So I would say I'm very careful at saying what I think is best, because it's what my interests are and what my personal agenda is. Do I want to make more money as a manager? Do I want to find my way? I just find the only thing that's tricky in this situation is, maybe it's just being young, but some people, there's some being a little bit maybe hypocritical because they want more but they want to do less, or vice versa. Like, you know, they kind of like, yeah, you know, they want this, but then they don't realize what they're saying over here is the opposite thing. Because if we're going to build the sport bigger, and you've got a mechanic that's saying, you underpay me, and I don't have a house, or I got kids or bills. And I'm just using as an example you know, of our program sometimes. You know, my goal is to, how do we get that without just pushing on the sponsor all the time? You should pay us more, and so on. So, you know, I think the way I look at it is, I'd like to see the sport come away from being just a niche sport, like in our circle, I don't know what that's going to look like. Like, I went through the snowboard era in the 80s, right? It was rad. It was like snowboarders were nuts, and like sponsors were throwing money, because I trained some pro snowboarders, and they came from the skate world, and it was like, just throw money at these guys and watch things blow up, and they'll go and have fist fights, and they'll party, and they'll do all these crazy things. And, you know, and then it became, people said, mainstream, and then it got kind of boring, and it kind of sold out, somebody would say. And then, but is it still successful? I don't know if it's due to that, if it's not. So I think our sport too, I definitely am not smart enough 100% to know what the right path is to this success level that maybe suits everybody. I'm not in the entertainment world. I kind of understand that they're trying to get these numbers right for the show to be a certain length. I have to believe that ESO and Discovery Channel, Chris Ball, everybody involved, I have to believe that they don't want to shoot themselves in their own foot. It's not like Chris is not, I think he's more educated in this world of racing than I am, as far as having a history with the UCI and stuff. They're thinking this through, but I don't think every decision they make can be one that's 100% the best. I think they're just balancing all these things, these plates, spinning them, and they're deciding which ones to spin, let one fall. It's okay, we can take that risk. And I think they're learning that there's going to be some new elements. And I think if we all sat down right now, we're all agreeing on every single part, and we're all saying, this is perfect, everything else, I'd be more frightened, because I would feel like that's not true life. You know, for me, I'm just going to focus on what I have control of. I can put in my vote, but at the end of the day, there's all of us voting on this. So again, I'm just careful at saying, let's all just realize that, first of all, like, hey, Bernard, I love that Bernard's in our group, because Bernard brings up things I would never bring up. But then that's good, because I might be missing the boat on something else. And then I think there's other guys out there that are like all for it, like 100% right behind it all, and they don't question anything. And I think that's good too, because I just think by us having a variety of people, such as life, I think it makes our world go round better. I think if we were all like the same, we'd all be a bunch of robots, and this would be a real boring world. So I'm cool with the fact that I think we're going to grow this sport. I'm an optimist by heart. And I think it's tricky, right? Like, we think we're going to exclude riders from our big show, and we're going to have less people being able to go race World Cups. But I just wonder, is it going to take a little bit of growing pains for a few years? And is this going to cause more series development in other places? Like, Canadian series needs much better development series. So now there might be a need for it, just like in the US, just like in Europe. I know we have the IXS Cup, but I just think there could be more tiers of racing. And I'm willing to try anything. Like, you know, when I say it's not my decision, but I'm 100% willing to put my effort into it. I don't want to spend too much time over here complaining, because then I'm not doing the stuff which is I got to get done. So let's just get that stuff done. So I just told somebody this yesterday, somebody from our program, I don't spend much time in the rumor mill or talk much. In fact, when we do pink bike stuff in my stories, I got to be 100%, you know, my mom's, you know, may lightning strike down my mother, or whatever you want to say. I don't read comments. I've never read, when I done a training, when I did the privateer series on pink bike, I never once read a comment. And I can say that with all truth. And all you pink bike people, I'm sorry, but I don't get into that. I like to just communicate with like the people that do count, like Emilie, and say, what do you think? Like, to me, that's what matters. Not somebody who doesn't have any involvement in it. So
yeah, for sure. What do your riders think? Like, have you talked to them about like the new semi-final format, and also like the fact that only top 5 overall are protected for like finals and stuff? It's like pretty big like changes.
Yeah, but again, like I get into it only if they want to. Like I don't, if they want to come to me and voice, I'll listen. Like, you know, so what George will tell you with some age, sometimes the best thing we do is just listen. And so I just listen. And then if they want my opinion, I say, you know, I don't really, I'm going to stay neutral on this, because I see I see the negative and the positive of it all. But our riders have been, Dakota's very quiet. Joe has been back and forth a little bit. He's unsure. Seth just goes with the flow. Seth is like, he's a team player for sure. And Aaron, well, he's got a different responsibility. He's also team owner. So he's trying to be sure that if somebody wants to hear from him, like if somebody wants to ask his advice, he'll provide it. But he's pretty good at also just, you know, we just chat about it, but not screaming and yelling about things. He's not sure about the semifinals things. Like, you know, again, Emilie, like you're saying is the same thing. And it's like, I don't know. I've been on both sides of the fence. I think you have too, Emilie. Like I've been, when we had Performex Common Cell, we were basically a semi-privateer team or a privateer team. And, you know, you don't have riders maybe inside the top 20 or 30. I mean, we had Kyle Sangers and, you know, Remy Gouvet banging away at 50th through 30th every weekend in that beginning. So I probably wouldn't have been happy at the time. You know, I probably would in the same place. So I don't want to be a hypocrite because I've been on both sides of the fence. So I just try and think about what affects us now. And I still think about the other teams. But I'm also trying to think about, like, you know, what do the viewer want? They don't like, you know, there's a lot of things that,
that's
you know,
where I tried to come at it from as a fan, because I'm not a rider, you know, as a fan, what's best for the fans. That was how I tried to look at it. And
and I have to believe that, you know, Discovery and Warner Brothers and the ESO group, like, they'd be, man, if I thought I had advice for them on that side of things, I mean, I would be completely a knucklehead. I mean, like, they're not going to ask me about training or, you know, how to book ferry crossings, you know? So, you know, I was trying to even think what I actually.
And Enduro's been taken into the UCI fold as well. That must be a positive.
Yeah, I think so. What are you going to do? You're going to race some? Are you going to race some?
I'm retired, so I'm not going to race anything.
Every rider comes out of retirement. We'll just figure out when that is.
Not for Enduro, at least.
Oh, come on. I'm e-Enduro, if you don't want to pedal. You'll probably
even worse.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't want to go down any of these rabbit holes with you, but
no.
I think for us, like your team, you're still with Pivot this year.
Yeah,
of course. So like for both of our teams, you and I would probably really have a good chat about this. We've got our EWS riders, EDR riders, sorry. We have our EDR riders and we have our DHI riders, now both under the World Cup. And we don't have the XC riders yet, I guess. You know, this fits nice, right? Because for us, it's going to be a lot easier. I mean, whether it's people when I say people again, I mean, I have to remind those that are also involved with us, like it's not as a big a show sometimes as it seems. Like there's us that drive the vans, have to get across like from the UK to Austria and we have only a certain amount of time. And if you're going to get there and set up your pits, which our old pits used to take, I think almost multiple days. No, that's a bad joke, but it would take at least 8 hours. And, you know, and then you got to try and figure all these numbers in. Like we literally were running out of time sometimes with these events just to be prepared. And then there's failures of vehicles. So anyways, I think just having it all under one umbrella is really cool. I think for the fan and for the enthusiast, this is super cool because now, you know, you're it's all there. It's in one package and it's cool. Like I think I'm so stoked about mountain biking right now. Like the racing, I think this is so good. And our numbers are good. As you saw Emilie recently, like we're still like, we're a success story, right? So,
so Steph had an incredible year on the EWS. He was second in the overall under 21. and he looks like he's really found his feet there. So what do you expect from him next year?
Yeah, this was so cool. Like that we kind of, it's really weird because we were expecting some good results, but then to really happen, it wasn't a shocker, but it was just like refreshing because, you know, as you know, I'm also his trainer, so with Performex, and so it was Seth wasn't really known as a peddler a few years ago. He was kind of free ride Seth, and everybody send it Seth, and it was, okay, we got a new bike, Seth. We need somebody to race it. Dakota, you want to do it? He just turned around and walked the other way. Aaron, give me the weird looking eyes. And, you know, and a kind of a gapping kind of like he couldn't even see me being in front of him anymore. So I knew that was the answer. And then I talked to Joe, and Joe was focused on DH. So I was like, all right, Seth, how about you? And he's like, yeah, let's go, saddle up. He was just that guy. And he's like, sure, we need to get this bike out racing, and I need to test it a bit more and get it right and market it a bit. And he just wants to ride. And like always, the young guys on the team, right? They just want to ride. And so it was cool. Like he jumped on it, and just as soon as it started going, like we start figuring it out. And for me as a trainer guy, I was like, all right, let's try and figure out how to make this guy be able to endure full days. And you couldn't just take the copy and paste from Richie Rude. You know, in fact, I had to do the same thing with Casey Brown back in the day when Casey kind of went from being DHer, and she was like, people forget that she went into Trek as an enduro rider. And so it was the same thing. And Miranda Miller, same thing. There was a bit of time I spent with her, and it was just like trying to figure out, because there's body types and there's all these things. And so, yeah, with Seth, it was really fun project on both sides, because I was able to be team manager guy and try and set up his program. And him and I kind of ran that program kind of separately from the race team a little bit. Like we kind of had because obviously we weren't, you know, officially an EWS team. So yeah, it was kind of cool. And we just took it one step at a time. But going into men's elite, I don't know if he set any real goals, but I think, you know, he's been lucky. He's been, well, not lucky. You make your own luck, I guess, but he's riding a lot with Richie, with Rude, not, you know, obviously because of the Performex relationship, but we just had a team camp here for Performex. And I got Cody Kelly on board as well now, and Richie's teammate, Kate Lawrence. So we brought them all out here, and a few of the other Performex athletes. And it's cool to see, like, I guess it wouldn't be unfair to say Richie's sort of mentoring him a bit. Like Richie's definitely helping him, and it's cool to see them. And yeah, I don't know. Like he told me recently he'd be really stoked on top 20s in men's elite. I think that's totally reasonable. Last year he had a few races inside the top 10, in like his U21 times were you know, in the top 10 in men's elite. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
So as his team manager, like, will these rule changes influence his career path? Because he was doing both disciplines. So will that change now? Because
no,
it's like
it doesn't. I don't know how your guys are, how your team's going to do it, but for us it was the same thing. Like he missed 2 DH rounds last year due to or wait a second, he just missed one. I think he just missed Mount St. Anne due to enduro. But this year he'll have to miss, looks like 2, right? And so he said, like, it'll be one of those situations. He's kind of free to make his own decisions. It's really cool with our program that way. I think at least I think it's pretty cool. He really ultimately has his final say. If he wanted to race enduro full time, or if you want to race DH, he could actually choose either one of those paths. But for him, it's also good. I mean, he's still building on the side I always say it, the Seth Sherlock Incorporated business, right? So his own rider brand. So he's like, I'm having some good success there, so I'll continue. But he will race DH this year, and then most likely, you know, and I heard his DH goal is definitely inside the top 30. Like he did it last year a couple times.
I think he can do it for sure.
Yeah, he just we did some cool stuff with him. He's learning some new mental focus stuff that's really, I think, helps him a lot, because he had crashes, and I think the enduro thing taught him a little discipline mentally. Not push harder but actually just stay very present as a racer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm stoked. I can hardly wait to see. And who knows, maybe a few of our other guys might just show up at a EWS race for fun. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, maybe.
I won't say anything, but
cool. So you don't have a female rider on the team. I know you train female athletes, and like you mentioned before with PerformX, you had female athletes in the past. So is that something you're looking at for the future, or not at all?
Well, I don't know. I think like you know this too, Emilie. It's like I don't think any of us make decisions based on do we want a male or female. Like I've never made that decision, even with Norco. I mean, when I was started Norco, I don't know if this is a I don't know if this is a news flash or anything, but the team was supposed to be Sam Blankensop and Emilie Regaud. So, you know, that was the team. We built the team. Norco got started. It was those. And then Emilie was like, I think I'm retiring, and, you know, just some things, you know, personal life. But that was a team. So I never really looked at it as like, oh, it's a male, female. It's like, who's available? I mean, Emilie will tell you this. It's just like, it's like windows open and they close. Like somebody's available and they're not, or you think you've got a rider that's capable, you know, on the program. And so I think we just kind of look at who's available. And of course, the percentage of male athletes versus female is, I don't know, I mean, it's growing on the female side, but it's still always more of availability for us.
For sure.
And our sponsors are pretty cool. Nobody really thinks, because like they do talk candidly about like what do you get better value from, a top 10 woman, or do you get it from a top 30 male? Like I hear those kind of numbers that come up. So it's like more like who's available, you know. I mean, if Emilie was available, like you'd never know, right? Like, pull her out of the dark ages.
Now that you show me that new bike, who knows, hey?
Oh, mind blowing. Now that the internet, now that it's on Instagram.
So the other thing you do, of course, is PerformX, as you know we talked a little bit about, but you famously train Aaron and Richie and Seth and a bunch of MTB and motocross athletes. Last time we spoke, I think you were about to launch the online program. I've seen quite a few videos of Richie doing stuff. I'm guessing it's going pretty well.
Yeah, it's been really, thanks for bringing it up. I mean, I'll send you that $20 later, but yeah, no, it's really awesome. For us, it was a long time in the making. I mean, this is 31 years for me for PerformX. We just crossed 31 years, and I always said to myself, like, I never ever go into this and say, oh, I'm the best in the business, or everybody else is stupid and I'm really good at this. Like, I constantly have like figure that the proof is like not just in the results, but it's you existing still, because you can bullshit your way through a few years.
Yeah.
And if it's not working, people will let other people know. So I felt like a long time ago, I said to myself, I wish I can't be everywhere myself. Maybe Elon Musk will figure that out soon for us, it'd be scary to duplicate me, but oh my gosh, I'll save you that. But, I thought, well, if I can do the online training, I can take these programs, I can make them quite affordable, which is a lot of people thought was pretty surprising how low the prices are. Like, give you a month's worth of training for $50 to $100 instead of, and I've always not been the person that, I never really pushed personal training. I'm not the person to go to the gym with somebody, and that's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just not my thing. I'd rather give you the prescription and help you test, do the assessment, give you the program and say, now go do that program. So it just builds that discipline a little bit. And, so when I could take this formula and film it really well, and then throw it online and show people what the 30 some years. And so we just passed a year and a half. I'd say that we're kind of like probably double where we expected to be with the number of people. And, it's really humbling. It's cool. It's really fun to interact with people. And if I can say anything, we've had, I'll pat myself on the back more than I'll even name drop all my big athletes. We're coming up to 400 people, and we've had one refund.
That's good.
So
that's pretty cool.
One refund. And that was the only one person that said they didn't like this program. I'm like, cool. Like, you figured it out, you know what's right for you, and it's something else. You need a
sorry about that, Todd. I tried the program and it wasn't for me.
Oh, you're a funny bugger, aren't you?
So on the last episode with Win, we discussed how it's hard now to be competitive at both enduro and downhill. It's getting a little bit more specialist. You need to kind of train for one or the other. Is that something you've noticed? Is that something you agree with? Because I know you work closely with Richie, and I saw some videos of you talking to him after the EWSE, and we talked to him a little bit before about that, about lighter riders being better at the EWSE.
What did Richie say in the interview before? Did he mention he may break that rule this year?
He did, yeah.
All right, so so you know what? It's an ongoing thing. I actually I would reserve my opinion on it, because it just be an opinion. I think you can almost do whatever you set your mind to do. I mean, I think people can, you want to, whatever you want to achieve anything. I think it's within your ability. I think the athletes couldn't do. I mean, the schedule might be the only thing that stops you.
Yeah,
you just you can't do it. But could they do it competitively? It depends on the body type. I mean, it depends on how people recover. Some people recover really well. They put a lot of effort. Some people would never do it properly. And it's probably more a mental or emotional thing with people, because they're like, it's pretty stressful. And you want to go racing and you're like, you're expected of something really good as far as results. And then you got to repeat that process again. And it can start getting a little bit overwhelming. But I mean, you look at how much pressure some of the athletes, and people will name supercross and motocross riders, how often they race, or even F1 racers. That's a pretty stressful job, being a rock star on top of it, in TV series and all that stuff. So I think they're more capable of than you think they are. And Seth and I actually have this chat all the time, and Wynn's a good friend of mine, so I don't mind throwing him under the bus. He's a bit of a whiner too, so no, honestly, I think it's because Wynn, honestly, if he was on here right now, I'd tell that SOB, and he'd be growling right now. But I would say he's so ambitious. Like, people have no idea. Wynn is fucking packing his every day full. If he's not doing a comedy act and he's not doing a film, he's on his road bike riding over the Alps. Like, he never stops. So if you have that personality and then you're trying to do more, it's going to feel super overwhelming. Like, he fills his day, like his cup so full, and I mean, Emilie knows, because she sees his brother, and his brother's probably, in my opinion, balances that a little less and just focuses a little more on what the job. And I think it depends on the individual. So I think they can do both. I think you can do both, and you just, and with like Seth and I, we're just going to take it almost race to race. If he needs to focus a bit more on the EWS, like put his head really in the game, go for a win, take a bit more risk, he might just back that intensity down a little bit at the World Cup, just slightly, and take the pressure off himself. But he's really good at adjusting that. So I think it's possible.
What do you think about, though, when you say body type? It's like someone that's like, let's say, very downhill forces, very like powerful, explosive, like having someone like Camille who like try to do enduro, like she would have to like train so much endurance because she's not an endurance type. She comes from ice hockey. Like we talked about maybe like the downhill rider maybe like struggling to get through days, like because they're not trained as much endurance as other athletes. It's probably what my maybe judgment about doing both. It's like the training might be quite different. Well, I know at least with my training, like I could have been able to like go through like 2 days of enduro racing for sure. So I don't know what you think about that.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't have much. I'd say at least half of the training, it's about 60% of the training is the same between my enduro riders and my downhill riders, the gravity riders, because I don't follow the same path as a lot of riders. To be honest with you, I got a lot of athletes that come over, and I just started with Julie Duvart from France, and they're always just started with her, and they're always kind of shocked how much less training they do with me, honestly. But there's an opposite side. They realize how much attention to detail I have. It's not what they're used to. There's the fine little details, like the exacts on certain things that are important, not just roundabout. So I'll do a different path. So if someone is go with another trainer, and they go another path, that might be way too much to try and endeavor. With me, it's not going to be the situation, because the amount of work we do, the load, I leave a lot of time for on bike and a lot of on bike training. And to me, the on bike is also where you're developing your physical fitness. You're getting out there and you're doing your laps. Maybe you're shuttling, maybe you're pedaling. Richie and I and Seth will make sure that we got some big pedal days and we got some shuttle days to work on speed or to apply climbing within the speed, because you need to feel fatigued to know how to perform going down as well. So we'll do things, and we might even throw moto in there. We might get crazy. We might go to my garage and do a little circuit and then have to go ride laps. So without giving away my secret sauce, I think it's not so much, I don't follow the same path. I'm not going to say that other people are wrong, because I can't tell you that. I can just tell you the formula I have works pretty good. My athletes, the big one that they do is, I'm sitting here in front of my sheets right now. They do a lot of fitness testing with me. So they do fitness testing and they do a mobility testing as well. And I just got back from communicating. I was just in Bentonville and I had a chat with Annika Beerton. I started working, helping her. It's like, the volume is so much less. She just first thing again. But the big thing is the attention to detail. Like, you're only as good as your greatest weaknesses. So that wouldn't even, that could be, I would say definitely when you start going into the XC world, then there's a whole different engine running. There's a whole different body type. But if you're at the top, you're probably, if you're Richie Rude, you're probably not going to get to the top XC. I mean, forget the trainer, right? It's not the trainer. I am only a small part of his success or the way he changes. And so with Aaron Gwynn or anybody. So I think when you start, it's like a gymnast. And no matter how determined you are, if eventually you're 6'7" and 300 pounds, you're probably not going to make it as a professional gymnast, or vice versa. You're not going to be in the NBA or professional basketball if you're a gymnast build. So I think we start wiggling ourselves, but I think the gravity sports, enduro, EDR, and the World Cup downhill stuff, it's not, in my opinion, that far off from each other. It's more strategizing on how you perform at an EDR race, and how how much effort. I mean, a lot of people forget this, Emilie, like, you've got a pretty good background because you've done a lot of training and you work with Cami, right? And so I think she's got a good background in this and she understands it. Most people don't know that you can only go 100% for under 3 seconds. Like, your 100% effort is maximum like 3 seconds. People don't recognize that. So any of these sports, like, even when I hear people say, I gave it my 100% today. No, you didn't. You didn't jump down a downhill run for 100% for 3 to 5 minutes. You wrote it, probably, if scientifically, you probably wrote it 83.5 or something, if you did the real hard science, and so you'll notice that some people might, they might, and we forget the DH is also quite enduring, because you've got multiple laps, and then not only got multiple laps, but you do a real hard thing on your physical ability. You go hard, then you sit for anywhere between 30 and 60 minutes, which is actually hard physiologically wise, because your body starts going into recovery mode. And then you're going over to your mechanics, getting your bike set up, maybe getting something changed quick, or maybe you're just getting a sandwich or you're heading back up. I don't know, but you're not repeating laps one after another. That's actually really physically hard. So where at least the enduro rider keeps that flow, and so it looks more enduring because of the duration. But there's something, I studied this a long time ago. I had the fortunate to be able to use a lab, and I actually studied Stevie Smith on this. When I started with Stevie, and I said, let's look at what happens with the body, because I was new to the downhill world as a trainer. I was a moto guy. And I was like, I want to really figure this out. What kind of effort you guys put out? And so I kind of started, if I'm going to let a little bit of the secret out of the bag, people are just looking at cardiovascular fitness, musculature strength, or let's say leverage, how much leverage create through your skeletal system. But there's a third component that's, I think, often missed, and it's called your energy system. It's your Krebs cycle, your energy system that runs these. Okay. And if you can use your training to affect that, but somewhere in the middle of that energy system is the system you've been given from birth, or your genetics and your body type. So if you can kind of figure out through testing how your anaerobic system works versus your aerobic system, then to me, you can start. So that's a much bigger factor than whether you tell me you want to race downhill or enduro. Way bigger factor.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting. Like I could talk about this all day, but let's try to keep this going.
Don't get me started.
So you mentioned being in Bentonville with Anneke. Anneke is a very good friend of mine, actually. And you mentioned as well the mobility testing, and that's like, I mean, I'm following you on Instagram, and I see when you do testing with the athlete, that's a mobility and like health and base fitness is like a big focus of yours. And so Greg Minnaar has been doing all this mobility testing. So how important is that to you? And has it changed, evolved in recent years since you started?
Yeah, the fitness testing really turned around for me. Well, not turned around. I used to do like let's say we were like VO2 max tests. We were doing back in the day, we learned in school VO2 max, or then you go and learn your bench press maximum, your squat maximum, your deadlift. Let's just say those traditionals. And I still might do that at some point with an athlete I've spent a few years with, just to, I wouldn't want to say shits and giggles, but I just sort of do it to see where a benchmark is with us. But for me, I really found this connection with concept equipment because I saw this equipment that had rower, they had a bike, and they had a ski machine. And when I looked and did the research on, sports science, those are three big, like some people would argue that a rower is some of the fittest people in the world. Nordic skiers are some of the fittest, like depends on what you judge fit, running a marathon or 100 meters. There's an argument, there's a debate there, but overall I could see, and then a bicycle. So to me, they were bringing this equipment in, and I said, I can cover the whole body with these three pieces of equipment. And then I could see what somebody's maximum output was available. In my test, I do it for 20 seconds. And then I could also compare that over to another test, which is 3 minutes on each piece. That number, I don't mind revealing, because there's just knowing that number is not enough. You have to know the science, what 20 seconds and 3 minutes do to the body. And if you space them at the right distance with a rest period, and the combination of them, it reveals a lot to me. That's what those sheets were I just showed you. You can kind of go into seeing what somebody's strength is like by doing 20 seconds, and you can get to see what their, let's call it, endurance is like when you do 3 minutes. And then you can compare those numbers, and what I bring into it is also their body weight. So you see their weight to horsepower ratio, because in this sport, you guys as bicycle riders, your bikes have a very small factor versus motocross. Motocross bikes are heavy. They're heavier than the rider, but you're way overpowering. So your weight to horsepower ratio is huge. So us to find the magic, like some people gain 5 pounds of, let's say, muscle. I've never seen anybody gain 5 pounds of body fat and get better, but gain 5 pounds of muscle, let's say. And does that equal more performance on the bike? Well, downhill, they should be a little quicker because of gravity, weight. It's called inertia. But at the same time, maybe it requires too much energy, that extra 5 pounds, and then they can't endure long enough. So there's a lot figured out with that. But then the mobility test is the opposite. And I don't mind saying I used the functional movement screen, the FMS. It's not my system. It was the guy in the US. And what blew me away is he came in and he tested the Canadian Olympic program a bunch of years ago. And I was fortunate enough to be around for that. And they were able to, by testing men's alpine ski team and the women's alpine ski team, when they were done the test, he showed the numbers and he ran the numbers and he said, here's your top 6, and 1 through 6 in the male and 1 through 5 in the female in the test. And all the staff were on board, the coaches, the trainers, they watched the test and they were like, okay, we see how you did it. And he said, okay, so you see the scoring, there's your number 1 guy. And they all started laughing. He said, well, that's our number 1 guy in the team by far. And he was by far better in the test. And the 6th place guy was like the worst guy on the team and happened to actually get cut within a week after that event. Not because of the test, but it was parallel absolutely between performance in the real world and what they did in this functional movement screen. And then we developed the functional movement screen in a way for 2-wheelers. So for moto and mountain bike, because what I learned is for you guys is it's not just how well you move on the bike, so you can explore better riding position, you can explore more skill development. You're dealing with injury management. So Emilie, when you're riding down that mountain as fast as you can go, you're going as quick as you believe as you can fall. In reality, whether you're not consciously thinking about it, but you're subconsciously going, I can handle this, because I mean, I've chatted with some of the top riders about this, and it's like, you have to come back with a positive effect. In other words, you let the brakes off a little more, you go a little faster, and there's an outcome. I remember sitting a while ago at Ritalik Lodge with Emilie Pirion. We were there for some off-season riding and fun, and we chatted about this. And it's like, if you have 3 or 4 good runs, positive results, you don't fall, don't get hurt, and then you have one that's bad, that can knock those 3, 4 off and then you're building back up. So to me, the mobility shows me not only, it shows me what a person is capable of doing, so that support themselves in a fall, but also what they're willing, because in these mobility tests, you have to support your body. So they're not just lifts or power output, they're actually supportive of the joint, and they're pretty difficult positions sometimes. And then you also see, so it's been really revealing for me, and then trying to use these and apply these. And then, okay, sure, you do a test and you get some results. What do you do with those numbers? It's one thing to find them out, but what do you do about it? So through my training, I'm trying to develop, because mobility also provides, it actually provides strength, and mobility will also provide endurance, because if you can move over a greater range, and the range you work within is even only this big, let's say, for example, your range of your hip is like this, but you only work within this. Well, in that sweet spot right there, you've got so much room that, believe it or not, it's not very overwhelming to your energy system, to your respiratory system, or to the muscle output, because it's so well within its reasons. But if you're working within this range and your limitations are there, then you're so close that extra work to get that close to your parameters is causing your heart rate to be up, which then means your respiratory system, your energy system. So people don't see this. So the real goal is to also become efficient, so you can build incredible efficiency. I think Greg Minnaar is a good example of being an efficient rider. I've gone running with Greg, in Australia many years ago, and we kind of joking around about some stuff. I remember one time about, cardiovascular, and how you can overdo things and underdo things, and strength. And I think he's learned to really hit that sweet spot as well. And he understands his body type. But then you've seen an influence of all these riders in the last few years. Look at the body types of Loic Bruni, Emilie Pirion, you look at they're athletes. I mean, these guys they got asses on them. They got big quads. They're strong in their lower. They got shoulders. These guys look like real athletes. And Aaron probably people saw that first out of Aaron a few years ago, and now you got but I mean, it's I can never get, people behind the scenes think they'll joke around, they're like, well, what about the guys that don't train or whatever? You can't, there's a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes you don't know about. I remember watching Bernard and Eddie busting their ass in New Zealand with what was his name, Ari, the old trainer.
Ari Barrett. Yeah,
10 years ago, 10 years ago, they were grinding in there. I remember Bernard screaming like somebody was, probing him, and it was, true story.
Yeah.
It's so true, the stuff you say. Even it's stuff that I haven't worked out. Like the bit about you only go as fast as you can crash. That's answered I don't know. I've never thought that before, but now I'm like, that's so true.
There's no crash bag. There's these guys, and you're protecting your head. If you look at the athletes, I mean, look at my thumb has almost been ripped off. I mean, I raced motocross, and I mean, it goes on, right? My elbow doesn't look that very healthy. That's cut my tricep right off. So I'm also talking on experience. It's like I'm giving you I'm proud of all my scars, but no, they're just honest. I raced vet motocross world championships a few years ago and got, you know, 6th in the world in the plus 40 class and the expert class. And I know what it's like, the stress and I've experimented with myself. But even after all that, and I'm telling you guys about my mobility testing, I'm still reading books like this. You know, they're sitting at my table. You know, what am I in? I'm that far into the book. There's my folded page, and I'm reading it for the second time. You know, if I think I know it all, if I think I can sit here and tell you guys like, oh no, I'm the man, like I know what I'm doing. Absolutely. I question everything I do. So the online training, man, that's where it's all this stuff. I've dropped it on there. We've fed it with as much as we can provide it with, and it'll be updated and, you know, frequently, like we just did. We created some off-season programs. So that's the latest and greatest that's on there. And again, a balance between affordability and then being, what do you want to call it? As transparent with the training as possible.
Okay. Something that I really shortly want to bring up is that like skills training, like mountain bike skills training. I've heard like you've got Jan Barelli on board, like to coach some of your riders. I believe he's working with Richie a bit. So what's the main focus of Johan when he's working with some of the best athletes in the world?
Well, it's the skills, right? It's that's really important. And again, you know, a good one here is George. You could put this up. It came out of your country. It came out of the UK. 16 years ago, they released it on Pink Bike, and it's the science of downhill. If anybody, we forget to get this link, you just look it up. Just Google search it, science of downhill, and put Pink Bike after that because it was on there. But nobody really read it. And it's this big article that was done. I think it was Manchester University. And it basically proved it proved that skills development was still the #1 thing that could improve a ride. Skill development. And it wasn't VO2 max. It was like not relevant. Nobody got faster in downhill because their VO2 improved. I've heard that there's a few top riders that were involved in this test and they kept their names off of it, but it's a few top UK riders, and it was a year, and it was a big group. And grip strength was huge. You improve their grip strength, their lower back. And I started researching, and I thought, well, I can sit back and tell you how friggin' smart I think I am, or I can just look at research. And I studied it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and figure this out. And I thought about how when I introduced motocross to Stevie Smith, you know, I was thinking like his forearms were sometimes an issue. And so we started using that as a tool. So yeah, like for me, you know, there's all this science about like skill, like in there, just basically proved that skill development was one of the biggest components. So I was like, well, I'm not a bike coach, like an on-bike coach. I'm not a skills guy. I did teach some motocross back in the day when I had my camps for motocross, and I knew how big it was on the riders. It wasn't just the fitness and the mental game and the nutrition. It was a huge part to learn on the bike skills. And then when I saw this research on this, and it said that bike skills was still like the #1 thing. So I'm literally saying this and telling you, like, I'm not as important as the bike coach, in my opinion. Maybe for some people who have a ton of skill, they might be different. They might need the fitness more. And then some people might have tons of fitness, but they need bike coaching. So I really was impressed with Johan doing things. Like, I think he's been around. He raced. I mean, I actually had a chat one time with Loic about this, about many years ago, about Johan. And Loic was like, man, that guy's been, and same with Blinky. Blinky actually had some good things to say. And then seeing him around, you know, the Sea to Sky, Vancouver and Whistler, etc. We spent more and more time riding together. And I think we both just gotten to know each other and better over the years. I remember going years ago with him and I and Finn Isles and Marcelo Gutierrez, and just watching how he interacted with these guys and how he was like good at confidence building and identifying, like I was watching him work with some of the best, you know, 2 Red Bull athletes. And he was just, I thought, man, he's got some stuff here. He's got such a like personal energy and so positive. And maybe some people it's whatever, too much, but for my formula of staying in that positive mindset and that kind of person that reinforces skill development, he just seemed to check all those boxes. And I was like, hey, would you like to kind of join forces a bit more? And he's like, for sure. So we sort of just did some rides together, and then he got Kate Lawrence and Richie going. And I think he did. I think I know they'll agree. Like, it's huge. He just got done working with Kate again last week or 2 weeks ago, and just the small things, and he can identify in a rider. Like his big one with Richie was, okay, you're super strong and you're fit, but why don't we learn ways for you don't have to use as much of that fitness? You can be more efficient, like riding with more trial skill, or maybe riding, pumping when you don't. And he was showing Richie on this trail, like where he could ride a section of a trail from one, let's call it 300-400 yards, that he could ride it as fast or faster without pedaling than he was previous to this, where Richie was just grabbing gears and grinding, as you'd say. And he was like, by just picking your line, being more efficient on the bike, pumping the bike differently. And then of course we noticed Richie was putting out less effort, his heart rate was lower, and he was actually quicker in that same. And it was those little details that are really cool. And I think Johann's been around, he's raced, EWS, and but it's like his personality is just infectious. It's cool when you get him out there. Like he doesn't look at his watch and decide, when the session starts and stops. He's so passionate, and it's hard to beat. And it's been awesome. And I can't wait. We got some pretty big things planned for the next couple of years. So I'm really excited.
So it's the off season right now, and it's a late start for the World Cup DH season next season. So what have you guys doing right now, training wise?
Well, they almost all start near the same if they're new. They all kind of do a lot of unilateral work. So one side of their body, left and right, independently. And then I do a lot of reciprocating work, which means pushing and pulling, because I really believe every joint has a purpose, two-way. So if you look at your body, you push, you can pull. If you look at let's say your bicep, it can pull, and your tricep can push. Every joint has that. So your quadricep, hamstring, and there's all your body. Every joint has an opposite muscle. So what we do is so I think told this to George before, and maybe some of the listeners, but that's where Perform X came from. So Perform was, if you could perform X, you should be able to perform Y. My professor gave me that name. Some people think it was got to do with motocross. Like they see MX in the end. It's got nothing to do with motocross. This was like 10, 15 years before I was ever introduced to motocross. My professor, Dr. Reese, said, "Yay, Mr. Perform X" in the class once, because I used to always say to him, hey, if the shoulder can perform, X internal rotation, what should be able to perform Y external rotation? Shouldn't there be some balance? Because we're telling athletes to just go to the gym and just get stronger, but couldn't they be getting too strong in something and not strong enough in another? Or wouldn't that support a bad, unhealthy joint? And he's like, I think you're onto something. So I took out the Gray's Anatomy book, and I studied, and I stole some ideas from some really good trainers, Charles Polquin, Bompa, and I started seeing him. I don't know if anybody knows this, but there was past history. One of the Olympics, 76 maybe, the Bulgarians were doing the world record bench press. And one of the reporters walked in the back to do some interviews, and everybody was warming up bench press warm-ups before they go on stage for the Olympics and set the world record. And she somehow got into the Bulgarian room, and they saw a video of all the Bulgarians weren't doing chest press in their warm-ups. They were doing back rows, the opposite. And they were like, wait a second, what's going on here? And they had set all the world records, and everybody was like, well, they just use more steroids of their body type. But no, everybody was on the same playing field, and they were beating people. So a lot of trainers fed off of that. So right now my athletes are doing a lot of balancing their body left and right, and push and pull. So reciprocating movements. And also there's a period of capacity work, so strength work, and there's a period of, let's call it building mobility. So some stick work, a lot of stuff that's got no resistance. Your body is its own resistance, and you're doing movements. And then we start getting into some big strength work right about now. We're starting to lift some like Olympic style lifting. So, big compound movements like you traditionally know, the squats, the cleans, the, bench press, back rows, all those big movements. But soon I shift them. I've got a trainer that works for me now too. It's a young guy I was in Bentonville with, and he's like, I call him my kettlebell and conditioning specialist. And this is, I believe, our secret weapon right now. And I'm going to say it, not for promotion, but it's pretty cool. It's Addison comes from a road cycling. He raced professional road cycling in Belgium for a team back in the day. and he's in his 30s. And then he just came home and he decided that he was going to become a top CrossFit guy, and he actually became one of the top competitive CrossFit. So when I first met this guy, I was like, wow, here's a guy that's done extreme on both, like pro road cycling, and lifted some heavy weights. Like he's put 300 pounds over his head. So, you know, and so I was like, okay, I think he's got something he's learned through this experience. So we brought him on board, and he's going to, a lot of the athletes will go. So it's not just me anymore. They'll shift into a few weeks with him, doing really dynamic kettlebell work. So really untraditional movements. A lot of my movements, as you might know, Emilie, it's a lot of hip hinging, a lot of shoulder hinging, a lot of replicating the bike movements, if you want to call it. But now they'll go into some really unorthodox, really super untraditional movements, because I believe that brings more balance back to the body. Otherwise, we get very undynamic. We get very one-dimensional. And I think it's good for us to still be very multi-dimensional. So if you look at the research on cross training, not CrossFit. CrossFit's cool too in its own way, but cross training, an athlete doing as many things as possible, like playing hockey, like riding motocross, like rock climbing. These things can also be very inducive to building your performance than just being one thing. And the one thing when I came into the sport primarily with Stevie Smith at 12 or so years ago, mountain biking, DH, I just saw a lot of athletes just like, I remember talking to Cedric Grassi about this when I entered. I just chatted with some of the best, and they were just like pounding stationary bikes, just like road cycle training, just like everybody just doing so, because they couldn't see outside of that, just pedal. And I was like, man, you guys are kind of like I kind of thought it was like, there's a limit. You're going to get to a certain place and you're not going to go any further. So why would you do any more other than to have a dislike for eventually training?
No, but it's completely true.
Yeah.
You know, I try and keep the training for me. I think the human spirit is huge. I gotta love it. That's why I stay away from the words you'd see if you follow me on Instagram. I stay away from the grind, the pain cave, all that shit. If this training is that much of a torture to you, my gosh, just go become a free rider or something. Like, it should be fun. Like, I love it. Like, I went in the gym last night and it's really cold here because I like challenging myself to this stuff. And I'm one of those people that I think frequency is important often, but small doses, not these big, super big workouts you guys are working so hard during the season as athletes. And see, I still say you, Emilie, because you're still an athlete. And even if you're retired, you're an athlete, and athletes are athletes. And there's so much work being put out throughout the race season, riding and practice laps and how intense it is. So the last thing you need to do, in my opinion, is go into the off season and just blast yourself with so much training that I feel like you're kind of burned out for the summer, and mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so this year we're bringing in motocross bikes a lot more. KTM has stepped up their support of me. They've always supported me, but now I'm getting a fleet of bikes. So you're going to see stuff in the future where everybody comes out here in April, and we're going to go riding locally, and we're going to add that in. And I mean, let's be honest, even if it's training, you don't really see it as training. You just sort of like, this is fun, isn't it? Yeah, like off-road, little motocross day. We'll do a track day. We'll do an off-road day. And it's like, I try and really bring that in. And then there's stuff you just got to do. You just got to face it. Like, even if it's not your favorite thing, you got to do a 4,000 or an 8,000 meter row. It's not like you're sitting on the rower just going, oh, this is so fun. No, can be kind of horrible, but it's not every day. Like I tell the athletes, it's once every couple of weeks, and you got to go for it. And so, I mean, we could be here forever for training.
One last thing I want to ask you about, because I thought it was really interesting. Neurocapture assessment. Tell us a little bit about that, because I saw you had Richie with all the guys with the helmets on with the electrodes in and stuff. And I believe is it measuring balance or something like that? Tell us about
two things. NeuroCatch is also like it's looking at it's looking at brain function. Okay, so it's looking at your various brain functions. In fact, I've got all my paperwork here from the test. And we just got all our results back from the test from NeuroCatch. And it's pretty cool because you get, I didn't even know you're going to ask the question. So but it's pretty cool. Like you literally get, you get to understand the way your brain works. That's basically your brain.
I'll never forget, like Matt Walker saying to me at one point, my brain can just process this stuff faster than yours. And it's true.
100%. It's the auditory sensation, and then you've got your basic attention, and then you're looking at cognitive process. So this neurocatch, we were really fortunate. I've got a connection with somebody. This should be thousands of dollars to do this test.
Yeah.
And we are fortunate to get some support. You bang away at this stuff for 31 years and you start making friends in high places. So I have, and this is incredible. This with Seth has been like mind blowing, excuse the pun, but it's been incredible. We've learned through the process where we think Seth has been, for example, dealing with sort of lack of attention, and it showed right on his report. Like they knew nothing about him. They didn't even know they just knew his first name, and they came in and did the test, and you have to do all these series of tests with words, and you're thinking about them, and you have to respond and all this stuff, and it shows you your ability to stay focused, or your literally. I am still in shock about this thing. It is incredible. I hope that this can be brought to more people in the future. I got a test, and that's the neurocatch part of it. So it's looking at those big things, the auditory, the sensation, and then your attention, and then your cognitive, and it breaks each one of those down into these tests. The other part was the balance test, like you said, George. Yeah. And the balance test, you'll see us in my little Instagram. You're basically inside this machine, and the floor is moving at different speeds and different angles, and you're there, and you eyes open, eyes closed, and you're looking at your coordination and your what we call your riding and tilting reflexes as well. And that was really cool because it revealed a lot about where your proprioception is and where you are in space, as they call it, so you understand the movement and stuff. So it was really cool. Like it picked up on Cody Kelly's without him giving any previous information. As soon as he went in the machine, they were like, something's wrong here. And he's like, yeah, I had a serious concussion this year. And they were like, yeah, your scores are super low. And and it looks so subtle. The floor is barely moving, and it's really, really subtle. It's not like standing on an exercise ball or something. It's these very limited parameters that bring in this real fine detail. And sure enough, and of course, the test was like, I don't mind saying this, like Richie scored, like they say, kind of off the charts. Like he was good on the neurocatch. He was amazing in the balance test. And they were like, I was like, well, he's got the Red Bull helmet. He's got the championships, it pretty much was a parallel, and it was pretty cool. Like I even went through the test, and I can tell you right now, the neurocatch showed me I get distracted. You probably hear it in this conversation sometimes. Like I'll go down a path. No, I do, right? I can't be a liar. It's like I learned this in my own transparency. Like I've got some weaknesses. I got some stuff I got to work on. I got to meditate as much as I try with my dogs, go out and do these things.
But I think I can see that because like in my head, I think if I turn up to a racetrack and I know the track, yeah, I'll have a decent result. It takes me ages to learn a track. I just haven't got the concentration to remember it. I set off out the start gate. I get a couple of corners in, and I can't remember where I'm going. It's just, but if I've ridden it 30 times before, I don't have to think about it almost, and then I can concentrate on riding. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
These riders are phenomenal. Like her, the way she can do it, like over us, like she can go down a course, and like I said to you in my last podcast, you can be walking down the course with them, and then you're wondering if they were like I see them paying attention, but once in a while they chat with somebody and it's cool, and I'm like, I'm pretty cool. I just then sit back, and if they ask any advice, I don't have anything to say otherwise. Just show up for your team photos is what I always say. But really, but then these guys will get to the bottom, and these girls, and they'll get to the bottom, and they'll be like, Emilie will be like, yeah, Bernard, you remember that 27th corner, and there's that gray rock with the little white mark in it, and could you go on the inside? And I'll be like, how do you remember that there was even 27th corner? Like, you know, that's an exaggeration, but you're right.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
you know, and it's just simple, George. It's just practice. I mean, it's some of it's probably genetic. They probably have gotten to the top because they've got that gift, but I believe it's also just like the 10,000 hour rule. They've repeated it. They're so good at their attention, and they can go back and again, it's an example of if Emilie is like knows that, like is seen the course that well, she'll go that much faster than you and I, not just because of her fitness, not just because of her skill development, but her just absolute, like it's me too. I'm the same way. My home motocross track, I can run closer to the fast pros in my motocross track. I'm not that far off. But if we go to another track, an alternative track that we both don't know very well, the gap is massive.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. That's exactly
Because
how it is.
your gap, their risk taking will also be more. They'll take bigger risk. There's a bigger risk factor in that less known track than I'm going to take because of my bad shoulder and my hips and all these excuses. Like, you know, there's this kind of bullshit thing that people say once in a while, like, oh, I got nothing to prove, or I got a job on Monday to go to. So those guys are crazy, or those athletes are nuts, or they're ballsy or whatever. It's actually not true. I don't believe Emilie wants to get hurt any more than the person who works on Monday or doesn't. She's in the same, she doesn't want to get hurt. Well, I think we all probably take the same amount of risk. I believe if you go to the bike park and you watch beginners all suited up, bad form, they're taking just the same amount of risk as she is when she's going at full beans and winning a World Cup. It's just, we go to our outer limits where our body knows any little bit further and we're going to go on the ground and it's going to hurt and we're going to be injured, and it's a self-preservation. So their memory and their ability to, she did a couple of runs down a track, or I think even she's going up to a jump face and she's recognizing that jump face and she knows what that jump face is going to do, or what that angle is going to do, or what that route's going to do. So she'll just hit it faster. We're not sure as much. And so there's a lot of these things, but yeah, the brain is, it is literally the biggest part of this.
Well, look, fantastic to speak to you again. Always dead insightful to have you on the pod, and I'm sure it'll give the listeners something to think about over the Christmas period. I know there's plenty for me to take away from that. And best of luck to you and the guys at Intense next for next season.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on again. Let me promote a little bit of our online training, and people can always go to the website at performxtraining.com. Send me a message. I always answer. I really do. And
you do genuinely answer.
Yeah, just you've got a question. I can help you with any of this crap you might, even if you disagree or agree. But otherwise, Emilie, I'll let you, because this is for her, okay? Because she's a manager now. Let's just check on one of your teammates. He's back there. So now that it's not a
Jacob Jewett.
Yeah, Jacob's back there. You can actually see through the forest. He might be.
Oh yeah, okay.
What's he doing right now? I can't tell. He looks like he's pretty much a good boy all the time. So he's just right there. He's probably walking his dog, or he's probably getting ready to he's out there in the trail building all the time. But yeah, he lives actually, just so you're aware, he actually lives.
Does Dane live there as well?
Well, unless they kicked him out of his house, because he's kind of he's kind of a little bit of the bugger, isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Jake's the good boy, but what's the other one doing exactly?
Yeah, I like. It's kind of cool. I see Dane walking around. He looks like he's got a little more. They call it tude, a little bit of attitude. He's kind of like looking me up the eye. Where Jacob's just always really pleasant. So it's kind of cool that they both have each other to see the differences. You know, it's they're pretty sweet. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for another episode. Thanks to the sponsors of the show: Hope Technology, JTech Suspension, Revolution Bike Park, Ride Southern Spain, Schwalbe, and SingleTrackWorld.com. As always, if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you've got a sec, please drop us a review. Alternatively, please give us a follow on Instagram at Making Up the Numbers Racing, or Facebook.com/MakingUpTheNumbers. Thank you to everyone for listening and sharing the podcast this year. We were doing pretty good before this season, but it's all gone a bit bonkers the last few months. So a big thank you. Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year to you all. We'll be back in 2023.